All the Right Movies.
Private Eye Eddie Valiant gets in over his head when he accepts a lousy snoop job that leads him to the murky shadows of 40s Hollywood in a tale of greed, sex, murder and toons. The perfect mix of golden age animation and 40s gumshoe noir. Who Framed Roger Rabbit won awards and was a box office blockbuster appealing to adults and kids alike. My name is Luke, and with me today are Westy.
I'm gonna ram him.
And John.
This is the last time I work with someone with a speech impediment.
All the right movies are here to make people laugh, and we will work for peanuts. Hello and welcome to All the Right Movies, a mustachioed, axe-wielding bullet of a podcast on classic and hit films. In today's episode, we're in Toontown to discuss the part live action, part animation, all amazing Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Lovely.
Before we do, just want to talk about Patreon for a moment. Listeners who sign up to us on Patreon are richly rewarded with 3 podcasts per month and access to all previous episodes as well. We've just done one on Keanu Reeves and John Wick, and coming up next week it's Tommy Lee Jones and The Fugitive. So, what's not to love, right?
Yeah, great.
Also, the most recent 20 episodes of this podcast are available to listen and download for free, like you're doing now, but we archive the older episodes, and you can get access to the archive by signing up to Patreon as well. So, plenty bang for your buck.
Load.
Go to www.patreon.com/alltherightmovies to find out more. Back to the show though. John, why do you want to talk about Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Well, it's the first animation we've covered, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
I like animations, and this is up there with the most well-known and the most important, I think. Groundbreaking at the time. Other films had blended live-action and animation before, probably Mary Poppins, maybe most famously.
Yeah.
Nothing had ever been done to the level of Roger Rabbit. The characters are great and iconic. It's funny. And there's a piano off between Donald and Daffy Duck. I mean, come on.
You love that one.
You do love that one.
It is all about those animations, though. My favourite thing about the film is how the passion from the animation team just jumps off the screen. It's a love letter to classic Looney Tunes and Disney cartoons, but also totally works as its own thing as well. So there's loads of good stuff to talk about.
What about you, Westy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to talk about it mainly for the craft of it. When I was younger, this was one of them films that just left us feeling like weird. It's got a really sleazy vibe to it.
It has got a sleazy vibe.
But it's almost too much. And I rewatched it again, and it was even more. It was heightened over the sense of time and everything that's gone on, and like the themes that are in there. It screams Chinatown, which we're going to talk about. Obviously, that's just it wears it on its sleeve. It owes a lot to its influences and its parodies, and I think it does work. But it's not one of them films that I go back to with like a real love of it. If you know what I mean, it's got a bit of a gritty, dark undertone, which unsettles me a little bit.
Right.
But I mean, for the technique, you know, for the craft of it,
amazing.
It is out of this world, really. I mean, for the work that's gone into it, and you can see that still. And I think there is a lot to talk about, but there is that really seedy undertow that I'd like to discuss a little bit more.
Love to.
It's going to be therapy for me.
Well, I was pretty much obsessed with this film when I was a kid. It was the first film that I remember seeing at the flicks. I might have seen something else beforehand, but this is the one that I first remember, and it really holds a special place for me. What I loved then, I still love now, but I appreciate more the feat of filmmaking, the animation, along with that razor-sharp script as well. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a film with more layers than most, with all of them firing on all cylinders. Like lightning in a bottle, you've got Spielberg's on board, Zemeckis directing, ILM, Dean Cundey as director of photography, and all the classic cartoon characters are in there, with Hoskins bringing his A-game as well.
Yeah.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit was produced by Frank Marshall and Robert Watts, distributed by Buena Vista Pictures and released on the 22nd of June 1988. Filmed largely at Elstree Studios in England, it was co-written by Jeffrey Price and Peter S. Seaman, directed by Robert Zemeckis. It stars Bob Hoskins, Christopher Lloyd and Joanna Casti in live-action roles and features the voice work of Charles Fleischer and Kathleen Turner.
The beginning.
We're going in straight to the opening of the film. We're introduced to Roger Rabbit and Baby Herman filming their latest classic, Something's Cooking, before P.I. Eddie Valiant is on the scene, accepting a snoop job from studio head R.K. Maroon to take a couple of lousy pictures. So, John, what do you think about this opening to the film?
Something's Cooking. Oh, it's great, isn't it?
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
I know some people say that of the hundreds of classic character cameos in the film, that it's a shame Tom and Jerry don't show up. But they do, really, because Something's Cooking is basically an episode of Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
I think, isn't it?
It's like the greatest hits. It's like the greatest hits of Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
And just as violent.
Yeah.
I love Tom and Jerry, obviously, and I think Something's Cooking's great as an opener. It's a brilliant way to tell us how the world works, I think. The film starts like a classic cartoon, and then the sudden transition when the director shouts cut and we see the world as it is great. They don't explicitly tell us, but it shows us how it all works, where toons are TV stars and their TV shows are cartoons, basically. And then there's the real world where they interact with people, and I think it's really funny. Pratfall after pratfall.
It's hilarious.
It is,
and
really.
almost all of them made me laugh. I like when he first notices that Herman's missing and he's frantically running on the spot, tearing up the carpet. That's brilliant. And when his pants are on fire and he's running around the walls really fast.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
That's great as well. I think great opener in terms of entertainment and also setting up the whole world as well. Really good.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, that cartoon is so immensely entertaining. Laugh out loud funny straight away, and poor Roger's been beaten to a pulp.
Yeah, definitely.
I really love that Baby Herman is like this cutest little kid in the world. All he wants is a cookie, and that's all he's after.
Yeah.
And then I adore this huge reveal when they shout cut, and he turns out to be this like angry, hateful misogynist. It's amazing.
He's horrible.
Really, really funny.
Chauvinistic pig, yeah.
He is.
This is probably one of the most entertaining cartoons I think I've ever seen. It has to be. It's at the top of the film. It has to introduce the world, and you're immediately in. I mean, some people would sit and quite happily watch that for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Just that. But you would have, you probably have a heart attack watching that for like 2 hours long. I don't think they'd keep it up, but they've crammed everything into it. Like, my favourite bit is when he comes out from that ironing board and he's like, "I'm here for you, baby!" And then knives are coming from him. Just pinned under the wall. And I love the scale of this as well. That kitchen's just huge.
Yeah.
Just flying around it, and you're just like, because it needs to be big, because most cartoons I've felt, even if you watch Tom and Jerry, feel quite contained,
Yeah, they
feel
do.
quite small. So this is like, you can tell it's for the big screen. It's showing you the grandeur of it, the size of it, and I do love the way that fridge opens and then you're into the world. And I'm pretty sure the guy here is Joel Silver, because he fell out with the head of Disney at the time, which was Michael Eisner, and it was done as like he was unrecognisable, shaved his beard off, didn't know it was going to be him. And then they didn't actually tell Eisner this until he saw the cut of it, and he was like, "Oh, actually, yeah, he's pretty good." And he is great. He's like, "What's this? A tweeting bird?" And he's like slamming it off the ground. It's totally believable, because the dialogue is just so grown up, it's so adult, it's so aggressive. Like you said, Baby Herman's transformation. It's like all of a sudden you're just in this really unrelenting world.
Yeah.
And then when Roger's running after him, "I can give you stars," and he's just like, "Look!" And then there's that amazing time where it just goes to Hoskins, and he just has that whiskey, puts it in the holster, and you just go, "He's got whiskey in his holster." This is just Chinatown. This is amazing.
Well, that character is amazing. That there's so many things in this opening sequence that are set up to be paid off later.
Yeah.
The stars with Roger. We've got like the character of Valiant, his backstory. We know he's a boozer, and we know he's a bit down on his luck, like immediately.
Yeah.
And also, we're set up here as well that Toons can take any beating and it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And Maroon reinforces this by explaining this in his office, and he says, "But break his heart."
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great line.
The producer you mentioned there, played by Joel Silver, do you know what his character name is?
No, go for it.
I don't.
Raoul J. Raoul.
Oh, yeah, it says on the credits at the start of Something's Cooking,
does,
doesn't it?
yeah.
Raoul, J. Raoul. Amazing that.
Also, right at the start of that, when the credits come up, that loungy sax and double bass that play over the credits, they're just pure class and immediately evoke the period. In fact, the whole Alan Silvestri score is incredible, really evocative of the period.
It is. I'm not a huge fan of the score, to be honest. Nah, it just reminds me of Back to the Future far too much. Pulls me out of it all of the time.
Really?
All of the time, yeah. I like the sax part where it is very much 40s noir style stuff.
Yeah.
But the way it's the musical cues are just so similar to Back to the Future all of the time. And when you combine that with often the accompanying Christopher Lloyd's voice, it just pulls me out of the film about 6 or 7 times when I watch it. Yeah.
I suppose when you mentioned it there, I suppose like during the action beats, then it is very much like Benny the Cab's ride.
Yeah.
And when they're in Toontown as well. Generally with Benny the Cab.
Yeah. The score is one of the weak parts of the film for me, to be honest.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that opening few bars, but to me, it brings me into that kind of seedy world where I've just watched this really incredibly funny, really entertaining, classically drawn cartoon when I was totally entertained by it, and now there's this slow camera moves and dusty desks and a guy drinking booze from out of his holster. It's just like what the fuck, and then it's just nah. I was like, oh, I'm so jarred by it. I dare say it, but is it slightly cliched of the period? Oh yeah, he's a private detective. Oh yeah, this is the time that they're in. Okay, yeah, it's based on Chinatown. Right, let's just do this score then, because that's exactly what you would expect. Just seems a little bit on the nose.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
A little bit cliched.
What I do love, music-wise, is that Toon band that break out of the back of the truck.
Yeah.
When Valiant's looking out the window. They're amazing.
Yeah, they're great. They are
Absolute
brilliant.
pandemonium, isn't it? When Eddie's walking through the lot of maroon cartoons, there's a pelican on a bike who falls off in a hilarious fashion, which is great. But they couldn't get the bike to stay up, like the props team. They were just trying to push it so it was straight past the camera. It kept falling over every single time. So Zemeckis was like, well, we'll just animate him falling off. So that just came because the props team couldn't keep the bike straight. So as the bike fell over, it's probably one of my favourite bits. It's so memorable.
It is.
He's like the worst postman ever.
So after this scene, we're introduced to Eddie's on-off squeeze Dolores at the terminal station bar. There's the reveal of a darker side of town and the source of Valiant's somber demeanour. We're going to pick up with Valiant at the Ink and Paint Club, where he catches Jessica Rabbit in all her glory. And there's a few other colourful characters in there as well. So, Westy, what do you think about this scene at the Ink and Paint Club?
I love the Ink and Paint Club. I do. I think this is like one of my favourite scenes because it's got so many bits in it that my dad laughed at when we were watching it and I didn't get. And there was bits like, nice monkey suit. And he's a big guy. He's a big guy.
He's a big fella.
You want him on the door, whatever. If you own that place, you want that guy on the door. And he notices everything. And he's a scary motherfucker.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have him.
He's huge.
I've got issues with it, which I'll get into it. But my favourite bits is Scotch on the Rocks. And I didn't get that for years and years and years, and it just picks it up and it's like toons, it's not right in your face, and I didn't notice that for years, but I always had my dad deck and I never knew why. And he's like, well, it's rocks, it's on the rocks. I was like, well, what does that even mean? He's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. But it's great. It's beautifully shot, this sequence. It's got a very classic vibe to it. It's in no way as a parody of itself. It reminds me of the start of Temple of Doom, the Anything Goes sequence. Yeah. I just find Marvin Acme is the strangest fucking character I've ever experienced.
I absolutely love him.
Really? Why?
He's just fucking weird. Do you not think? Have you seen his outfit?
His outfit's ridiculous.
Spraying himself with like fucking aftershave.
The atomizer.
And he's just like, and then he just squirts ink straight on Valley and thinks he's hilarious. He's horrible.
He is hilarious.
He's not, man. He's a fucking maniac, and I'm scared of him.
He starts pissing himself laughing when he squirts that ink, and then he's got that classic hand buzzer.
Yeah,
he put it there, pal.
Fantastic. But that's all the way through the film. That hand buzzer, like it's the ultimate plot twist every single time. And it's a hand buzzer. But it's when Jessica's about to come out and he just points.
Yeah, he points and gestures towards her.
It's just,
He is a bit of a prick. Roger talks about him like he's his dad, but he's been playing patty cake with his girl. And he's a total dick.
I don't like it. Patty cake, I don't like it at all. But I love the touches in there. I love the fact that Mary Poppins penguins are in there as like the waiters, which works really well. The thing I love most about this is, now that I've watched it again, and the thing that I really appreciate is Betty Boop's black and white.
Yeah.
And everyone
Great
else,
touch.
It's just such a wonderful touch. It was still voiced by Mae Questel, who was the original voice of Betty Boop as well.
Yeah, Mae Questel was 80 years old at the time of release.
Oh, amazing.
Right.
And actually fans of National Lampoon series know her as Aunt Bethany in The Christmas Vacation.
Oh, right. Yeah.
What about you, John? What do you think about this scene?
I love the look of it. It's a 40s style club, has a real authenticity to it.
Yeah.
Also how it reflects the real life and awful segregation of the time, where toons are only allowed in the club as either performers or as staff, but not as customers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The Betty Boop cameo is great, and obviously it operates mostly as the introduction to Jessica Rabbit and one of the main characters. I think it's fantastic as an intro to her. Probably one of the most iconic animated scenes Hollywood's ever done, I think. Maybe one of the most famous scenes in the film. I think it's fantastic. There's loads of little nice touches in there. Westy mentioned the Mary Poppins penguins, and the bar staff are all great, and the huge chimp guy on the door. It's all fantastic.
Talking about the patty cake there, when Acme's trying to coax Jessica into that, and we're outside and Valiant's trying to take the pictures, there's a really funny line that gets a little bit lost in the mix. She's saying that she has a headache, and he's saying, come on, and then she relents. And she says, all right, but this time take off the hand buzzer. Brilliant. So, while we're on the subject of Jessica, lead animator Richard Williams and Bob Zemeckis called her the ultimate male fantasy. Apparently she's poison, but Roger thinks she's Betty Crocker. What are your thoughts on Jessica, John?
Well, sexy, isn't she?
Let's not beat around the bush. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, she's no Daphne or Scooby-Doo, obviously.
Of course.
Or the Caramel Bunny, for that matter.
Caramel Bunny, definitely.
But after them, she's great. I think she's a fantastic idea. Strong character with her own agenda. And that moment where she appears from behind the curtain is now iconic.
Oh, yeah.
Is Roger punching above his weight with Jessica,
Massively.
do you think?
Massively. Obvious, but Betty Boo doesn't think so. She says, what a lucky guile.
Yeah, I love that, and all the Toon girls fancy Roger. That's great.
Yeah, it's great.
He's fucking hilarious. What's not to like about that?
What about you, Westy? Jessica Rabbit?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's caused some irreversible issues with very many people who've seen
Outrageous.
this at an age where they're just like, what on earth is going on here? I don't know if it's a little bit too much. Now that I've watched it again, it's all very like hypersexualized and amazingly delivered, and like I know you're the one who just said she was sexy, and you guys went a riff about a caramel
We
bunny.
opened the door for you.
You know, from a certain point of view, from a tongue-in-cheek point of view, yeah, absolutely fine, absolutely hilarious. But again, for me, this is a little bit more of a product of the time. I don't think you could do this now and get away with
Absolutely
it.
not.
Such a blatant brushstroke of like, this is it. Every bloke's going to love this woman. I think she's all right. I prefer our band, the Black Crows from Dumbo.
Is that who it is?
Yeah, it's all the
Oh,
Crows.
I didn't know it was them.
Yeah. So
Fantastic.
I love them guys. I love the whole setting. I love the way it's played out. I love how it is the personification of the male fantasy, but I don't necessarily agree with everyone going, well, yeah, that's it, they've nailed it, because I think it's different for everybody. I hope I haven't made that confusing.
Not at all, not
right,
at all.
okay.
Distance yourself very well there.
I think what does work great with Jessica is how they took inspiration from classic female icons from the era.
Yeah.
I know the first inspiration was from another Warner Brothers cartoon legend called Tex Avery.
Yes.
He made a cartoon in 1943 based on Red Riding Hood with a character called Red, and she was the initial inspiration for Jessica. And that cartoon was called Red Hot Riding Hood, which is brilliant.
Brilliant, genius.
It just gets worse.
And they also took inspiration from classic Hollywood stars of the time as well, like Veronica Lake, Lauren Bacall, and Rita Hayworth. I think the Rita Hayworth influence is especially obvious.
Yeah,
the
definitely.
red hair in this scene is very much like the one from Gilda, which sent everybody wild, where Rita Hayworth sings in the 40s. But Jessica, to me, she doesn't feel like a rip-off or a pastiche or a pale imitation. She feels like her own thing. She's Jessica Rabbit.
Yeah.
I think she's great.
Oh, she's outstanding. I absolutely love that she's made out to be this classic like femme fatale with all the attributes, but the big reveal that her actions are entirely motivated by her love of Roger is fantastic.
Yeah.
However, she does hit him over the head with a frying pan, so she's not the most sensitive of lovers, is she?
That's fine in the cartoon world, though.
Yeah.
To make Jessica more unique as well, the animation team animated her boobs so that when she walks, they bounce in the opposite direction to what they would do in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, apparently I've not just noticed that.
Yeah.
I read that.
Yeah, right.
Bouncy. She is voiced with sultry allure by Kathleen Turner. What are you laughing at?
Bouncy. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Kathleen Turner, who voiced Jessica. She's uncredited for this really super iconic role.
Yeah, I think it's credited to Amy Irving, isn't it? Because she's the singer.
Well, she's the singer of that Torch song, Why Don't You Do Right, the steamy number in the Ink and Paint Club.
Yeah.
But that's all Amy Irving does. Kathleen Turner does the voice apart from that.
Yeah, I know as well, when they were shooting the film, Hoskins said that Jessica obviously hadn't been sketched yet by the animators, so he had no idea what she even looked like.
All right.
And Zemeckis said, just imagine your ideal sexual fantasy. And Hoskins said, what I imagined was far less risque than what Jessica ended up looking like. Bit of a prude, Hoskins, isn't it?
Yeah. I love that last note when she sings "do" and there's that little pause.
Oh yeah.
And then just like when. Don't just laugh at everything I'm saying.
I'm laughing at Luke, not you.
But it's when she just like moves away from it and the tie slides out of her hand. That just looks amazing. It's like it's seamless.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Also in this scene, Daffy and Donald Duck share the screen. Absolutely amazing. Steven Spielberg was on as exec producer, and the film was part produced by his company Amblin Entertainment. It was he who struck deals with the major animation studios for their stars, but there were stipulations that they had to share equal screen time, which is why you've got Daffy and Donald here, and again later on in Toontown when Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse share the screen.
Yeah.
Disney allowed 81 of their characters to make an appearance, and Warner's gave up 19 of their characters for the film as well, all for a flat rate fee of $5,000 per character.
Right.
And the word is that because Spielberg had so much pull in the industry, Disney and Warner's were happy to do business so as not to sour a potential future relationship with the director.
Oh, really?
Disney gave up the majority of their stars, major stars, for $400,000.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, the power of Spielberg, isn't it? Does what he wants.
Yeah.
Does what he wants.
There are other characters in there too, from Fleischer Studios, 20th Century Fox and Universal, to name a few. Overall, there are over 150 pre-existent animated characters in the film, but they did want more. They got rejected by characters like Popeye, Tom and Jerry, Pepe Le Pew, Casper the Friendly Ghost, because their respective studios thought that $5,000 was a bit light.
Right, okay.
Yeah. It wasn't supposed to be like a final scene at Acme's funeral where everybody gathered and then at the final shot of the film was Casper scared everybody away. And that was like in the original
Oh, really?
script. Yeah.
So with the Snoop job done and Roger crying into the night, the story's just getting started.
The director.
The man behind the camera is our friend Robert Zemeckis.
Our friend, like.
Westy, what do you think of Zemeckis' work on Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
On Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I think it's fantastic. I think for someone to take control of a project like this and to finish it is fucking outrageous.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's a huge vision. It's a huge task. And for the things that I don't necessarily like about it, but I love that it has the balls to do that, to turn it into more of an adult vibe. Yeah. It's not necessarily a kid's film. Like, you can enjoy it now and you can put it on now and watch it, and not necessarily be driven into like, well, this is a kid's film, I'm not watching it. It has got a mix of tone, very well executed. Even now, it still stands up. So I think he's done a fantastic job on it.
What about you, John?
Slightly different take from me, to be honest.
Wow.
Now, I like Robert Zemeckis. Back to the Future is one of my favourite films. I really like Forrest Gump. I really like Contact, obviously. And I do really like Who Framed Roger Rabbit as well. I think Zemeckis does do a good job, but I do sort of feel like this film is a little bit of a missed opportunity as well, to be honest. I mean, it is iconic. The characters are all there. But where I do feel a little bit disappointed in the film when I watch it is in the storytelling. When you look at, say, Back to the Future, the storytelling is sensational. It's like,
yes, it is.
It's like Spielberg. But here, I don't think Zemeckis totally nails it, to be honest. And the problem, I don't think, is the plot, because the plot's there. It's written as this noir-style murder mystery that unravels as we go. It's a brilliant idea, but I think you only realise how well plotted it is after you've seen it a few times, because I don't think Zemeckis makes it crystal clear what's going on all of the time, I don't think. I mean, nowadays, Zemeckis is known as this big animation guy. He's done The Polar Express and A Christmas Carol, both big hits. But I know Roger Rabbit was the first time he worked on an animated movie before, and I do think it sort of feels like that a little bit. I do wonder if so much of his time was spent focusing on that blend of live action and animation, which was such a new thing, that the storytelling did become a little bit secondary. And Westy, I think you might disagree with me here, but I don't think it looks fantastic aside from the animations either. I mean, it's Dean Cundy, so it's A-list DP, but I think it looks fantastic because mostly of the animations and the production design, rather than the cinematography, outside of the Ink and Paint Club, which does look great.
Yeah.
So I do think Zemeckis did a great job in terms of it was new, it was groundbreaking, and he pulled it all together. But I think if he did it now, he'd probably knock it out of the park because of his extra experience. But I do find the direction a little bit frustrating at times, to be honest.
Wow.
Am I being really harsh?
I agree with you in certain aspects. I don't think that the story is that obvious. It takes a few watches to really understand what's exactly going on, and I always put that down to watching it from being a kid, and I didn't really care about this cloverleaf and the red car thing. I just wanted to see more Roger, so I just put it down to that. But now that you mentioned it, maybe it isn't as abundantly clear as it could be. But it's a huge undertaking, and I know he's got like this super talented crew behind him as well to carry the load, but it's a really daunting project, like you were saying, Westy.
Yeah.
And I think he executes it expertly. I think it's done absolutely fantastic. I think it's the lightness of the film and how it just whizzes by that really appeals to me. It's in and done before you get a chance to catch your breath, and every scene is a marvel. He's spinning so many plates here, and the action has got to hit the right beats, and the gags have got to land, and I think they do. It's fantastic.
From the DP's point of view, from Dean Cundy's point of view, I do believe that they want to introduce a lot of contrast, a lot of shadow. But he's shooting all the live action first that's going to be animated over the top of. So I think that he has to play it a little bit safer.
Yeah, I mean, Cundy has one arm tied behind his back, doesn't he? Because he's shooting things that don't exist. And he can't do anything outrageous because the animation team need to be able to animate everything into the scene, into the frame. So he is working within massive limitations, so that's fair enough.
Yeah. Zemeckis wasn't top of the pile on the list of directors. Disney acquired the rights to Gary K. Wolfe's 1981 novel Who Censored Roger Rabbit pretty much immediately when it was published. They began development for a film for a couple of years, and Zemeckis offered to direct himself. He really loved the project in 1982, but with two relative flops under his belt, I Want to Hold Your Hand and Use Cars, Disney said no thank you.
Right.
I don't know if they were that polite, but they said no thank you.
Based on them two films, I would have said no thank you.
Yeah, definitely. They had Terry Gilliam in the frame to direct.
That would have been fucking bonkers, wouldn't it? Let's be honest.
That would have been even more terrifying, Westy.
Yeah.
We would not be talking about it if it was a Gilliam film.
I don't think I would have finished it.
I think he turned it down. He said it is conceptually inauthentic to use the Looney Tunes genre character stable as a springboard for a variation on Howard the Duck.
What?
Roger Rabbit is miles better than Howard the Duck. Sure.
Yeah. So is everything else. Everything is.
Well, I know that now Gilliam says, I completely regret that decision.
Yeah, he said that he thought that it was going to be too much work, which was pure laziness on his part.
It was, but
Really
it's a huge amount of work, to be fair.
It was a
is
huge amount
massive.
of work.
Yeah.
The film went into turnaround for a couple of years until Michael Eisner became Disney CEO and put it back into pre-production. Zemeckis had since had two mega hits in Romancing the Stone and Back to the Future, and he was snapped up pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
Especially Spielberg was on board, his old pal.
There you go.
What I do love, and what gives the film so much weight, is the inclusion of loads of cameos from classic Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, MGM characters. I think there's about 140 in total, so absolutely loads. And they get cameos in there as well from some of the most famous voice artists who did them as well, like Wayne Allwine, who did Mickey Mouse, Tony Anselmo, who did Donald Duck, Mae Questel, Westy mentioned, did Betty Boop and Olive Oyl, and Mel Blanc, who's a bit of a voiceover legend. Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Sylvester, Tweety Pie. And I know as well that during production there was a disagreement between Zemeckis and Warner Brothers over the way the Looney Tunes characters should look in the film.
Right.
So Warner Brothers wanted them to use the characters as they appeared at the time in the 80s, whereas Zemeckis wanted to use the classic versions of the characters from the 40s. So Zemeckis sent dummy footage of Roger Rabbit using the modern designs to Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers approved the footage, and then they just used the 1940s versions anyway.
What a
Zemeckis. Brian De Palma. So, which classic cartoon character cameo is your favourite in the film?
Mine is Dumbo. Not because he's my favourite character or because he particularly does anything, but I love the reveal of it. And he's just, you see his eyes behind the blinds are pulled up, and you get a jump scare. And it's like there's a jump scare in this film, and you're being jump scared by Dumbo. And you're just like, oh, that's just fucking amazing. Just probably one of the nicest characters from Disney ever. And it's just made you shit yourself. And then there's that really great line is like, oh, he just works for peanuts. Again, throws them out the window. It works as a parody of itself. Really, really good. I love that bit.
I'm going to go with Yosemite Sam.
Of course you are.
He's amazing. Now, if Pepe Le Pew or Marvin the Martian were in this, they would be mine, but it's Yosemite Sam. When he puts out the fire on his ass, his moustache lifts his hat off his head.
Yeah,
Really funny.
My favourite's definitely the Ink and Paint Club piano duel between the two ducks.
Oh, amazing.
Warner Brothers,
Yeah.
Daffy, and Disney's Donald. Probably the best scene ever, maybe.
Ever.
Daffy's easily my favourite classical cartoon character. Watching Daffy frantically pound away at the piano always makes me laugh. He's wearing boxing gloves at one point and still
Yeah.
plays note perfectly.
Yeah. Is he playing with his elbows at one point?
Everything.
The great
Well,
thing
like
about
this-
this scene is like they fucking hate each other as well, don't they?
Yeah. There's a cannon.
Yeah.
What I like about it as well is that I know for this sequence, Zemeckis didn't storyboard it. He had a guy called Chuck Jones do it. So Chuck Jones wrote and directed loads of the Looney Tunes cartoons in the 30s and 40s. I think what the film does great, and this scene might be the best example, is that when we see these classic characters, it does feel authentic. It doesn't feel like we're watching modern interpretations of them. It feels
Yeah.
like the classic versions of them. And having Chuck Jones storyboard this particular scene is obviously the reason why, because it feels like Daffy and Donald Duck.
Yeah. It's absolutely brilliant.
I love the way they're taken off the stage as well with them hooks. And you just like
Yeah.
pulled off that curtain down. Still laughing.
Acme's killing himself.
Yeah.
They never get to finish the act.
What are you surprised for then?
Why are you still laughing?
So they must go and have scraps on the piano every single night.
Yeah.
Every single night. Cannons
Destruction.
Absolute pandemonium.
We mentioned about the noir elements in the film, and Zemeckis loved that part of it. There are a number of shots in there that pay homage to the great Hollywood tradition. Valiant hangs his hat on a Maltese falcon. The writing on the glass door of Eddie's office is shot from the inside, which is a classic noir
Yeah.
trope.
Yeah.
And Roger chewing on the blinds in R.K. Maroon's office is a direct nod to Burt Young doing a similar thing in Chinatown.
Nice.
I know from the very first screening they showed this to 18 and 19-year-olds, and almost all of them left the theatre. And it was just about 2 of them left, and the producer turned to Zemeckis and said, "What do you think about this?" He said, "No, I'm not going to change a thing." It's absolutely perfect. It's not for them.
Yeah, so for 18, 19-year-olds, that's probably the worst age you want to see
Yeah,
this
that's
film.
not the demographic.
Yeah.
You want to
Definitely
see,
not.
you want, it's for kids and it's for adults. 18,
Yeah.
19, you're too cool for this sort of thing, aren't you?
Yeah,
So-
exactly. Exactly the reason why I probably didn't watch it for a good chunk of time from my teen years up to I was about late 20s.
It's not a great chat-up line, is it? Gotta
Definitely
come
not.
back and watch Roger Rabbit.
Definitely not.
And I've tried, to be honest.
Didn't work.
No. Patty cake. Game of patty cake.
Fancy a game of patty cake. Woo. So Zemeckis hitting one out of the park with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, unless you speak to John, of course.
No, he's great. I just think it could have been better.
Don't backpedal now.
The cast.
Looking at the main cast of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, first place that we're going to look is Bob Hoskins, who plays Private Snoop Eddie Valiant. Westy, what do you think of Hoskins as Valiant?
I've not seen him better in anything. I think he's fucking
really?
brilliant in this. He just carries the whole film.
Boom.
He has a brilliant arc. He's completely...
Yeah.
He's so beaten up and down and done with everything. It's a real tortured soul and a real tortured performance, and then to go all the way to a song and dance number at the end and make you believe it. Like, if Bob Hoskins doing that, it's just like your pissed uncle at a wedding or something, isn't it? He's fantastic. There's not a bad line spoken by him. He's given some hard dialogue as well to really nail home and make seem plausible and believable. And I think he does really, really well with it. And the scenes where it's just him with Roger and they're just going at it. It's 100% like he's just pissed off. Like it's just when one of your kids is just going mental around the house and you're just trying to calm them down, and he captures it perfectly, and he's acting to nothing. I first saw him in Zulu Dawn, obviously,
Right, okay.
which I loved him in. I thought he was
Yeah.
class. Long Good Friday's brilliant. Cotton Club,
Amazing.
obviously. Mona Lisa, they're all fantastic.
great.
But I think if you look at the stuff he did after this, this is almost like his zenith. This is like his peak.
John?
Yeah, I think when you just watch the film and Hoskins' performance, he is very good. He hits the right moments, whether it's comedy or drama. The character does have an arc, and he portrays that well. But I think it's when you see behind-the-scenes footage that you realise just how good a job Hoskins did.
Absolutely.
When he's acting opposite Roger, which is most of the film, he's acting against nothing, obviously, and you can't tell from his performance at all. And the scene set in Toontown, especially, where everything except Hoskins is animated, the characters and the backgrounds, he was acting with nothing at all except a blue screen. That footage that you can see of him doing that is really impressive. And when you do see that, you realise he didn't just do a good job; he was absolutely incredible, brilliant,
amazing.
It's a bit when you see him in Benny the Cab for me. Like, you see them behind the scenes. He can't be comfortable. His tie's blown over his shoulder, and he's just kind of, his belly's hanging over the top of it. But he's just still absolutely nailing it. It's fucking brilliant.
Yeah. I think he's perfectly placed to portray this character. He's got a classic deadpan style, but I think he's got some really good comic timing, like you mentioned, the song and dance number at the end.
Yeah, fantastic.
I love that he's shown as this tough guy pretty much immediately in the bar when the guy Angelo is having a go at him for working with toons, and he kicks the chair from underneath him and shoves a hard-boiled egg in his mouth.
Horrible.
And calls him meatball.
He's horrible, that guy, that Angelo. Like,
He's a dickhead.
redeems himself, but he's fucking disgusting in that scene.
Yeah. Probably one of my favourite scenes is when we first see Valiant in his office. We get loads and loads of character development. He's looking at the pictures of the holiday he had in Catalina. So we've got like Eddie's relationship with Dolores and with Teddy, his brother.
Oh yeah, you get this classic swoop around the office where it's like showing newspaper cuttings and photographs.
Absolutely amazing. So he's portrayed as this kind of like fun, love and party kind of guy who's been completely changed into this massive sourpuss because of this really emotional moment in his life.
That reminds me of the opening of Back to the Future when it scans over all the clocks and you see basically the whole story. And Zemeckis loves that kind of exposition where it's just delivered visually in one kind of swoop, like pay attention or this isn't going to work for you.
Yeah, like you were saying there, from the news clippings we found out that he loved nothing more than working in Toontown, and was scanning over these photos which revealed that Eddie and his brother were part of this world famous Barnum and Bailey travelling circus, most recently depicted in The Greatest Showman a few years back.
B.T. Barnum,
Yeah. So this gives an added layer to Eddie's characters, further cementing the fact that he's all about the laughs and entertaining people, or he certainly was, until this traumatic event has happened. And it's expertly done, like you said, Westy, in 1 2-minute scene with zero dialogue. We've got a completely fleshed out character.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, and it's very sad to see that he's turned into this drunk, miserable bastard.
Yeah. And I love all the dust on Teddy's desk as well.
Oh.
Nothing's being moved.
Yeah.
And then when Roger touches it, he's like, don't sit there. It's like, oh, there's that real moment where you just think, Jesus Christ. Yeah,
fantastic.
It's brilliant. Love it.
I do have a little bit of a problem with his American accent.
Oh, really?
It wavers off in certain areas. I think it's generally in his office when Roger's there, when the weasels leave, and he says, for starters, don't ever kiss me again. It's terrible.
It doesn't bother me because this was the first film I ever saw him in, and I probably saw this 10 times before I ever saw Bob Hoskins and anything else, so that was how he spoke for probably the first 20 years of my life. So his accent doesn't really bother us that much.
Right, okay. In the early days, 1981-82, voice actor Peter Renaday screen tested for the part of Valiant, but when it hit full throttle in the mid-80s, there was a list and a half of potentials. Harrison Ford was top, but because the budget was tight, he proved too expensive. Chevy Chase turned it down, and Bill Murray was next on the list, and he was uncontactable. When he later found out that he was in the frame, he said he would have done it in a heartbeat.
Really? Yeah, he was in public
Shame.
when he found out, and he screamed out loud, apparently.
Fuck! Classic Murray. Joe Pantoliano actually screen tested for the role, Joey Pants.
Yeah.
When Richard Williams was first drafted in to show what his animation could do, it was Joe Pantoliano who was playing Valiant.
Right.
And here's a little clip of him as Valiant, if you haven't heard it.
Roger, what the hell are you doing here?
I need a place to hide. I'm in trouble, Eddie.
Why'd you run?
In case you haven't noticed, I'm a rabbit.
Right, and you're not gonna get away from me again.
Slightly better American accent there.
Slightly. Then there were the usual names bandied about in any 80s film. Jack Nicholson, Sly Stallone, Robert Redford, Ed Harris was mentioned, and also Charles Grodin.
Yeah.
And considering Hoskins was way down on this list of candidates for the role, would you have liked to seen any of those as Valiant?
Yeah, well, I've got a couple more names as well. I mean, I think Rick Moranis was in there, Tom Hanks, Harrison Ford, Eddie Murphy turned the role down.
So anybody big in the 80s.
Yeah, everybody, the whole hit list.
Yeah.
And again, Eddie Murphy said that he later regretted it. I mean,
Of course.
I do know that the one with Bill Murray, and I would love to have seen him in there. The scenes between Murray and Roger would have been absolutely fantastic. I think it would probably be one of Murray's best and most famous roles if he had ended up taking it.
Definitely.
And of those other names they have mentioned, I think Hanks would have been pretty great. I would have loved that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Hoskins did a brilliant job, like I say, so I definitely wouldn't change it necessarily, but I would love to have seen what Murray or Hanks could come up with in that lead role. Fantastic.
What about you, Westy? Any of those names that you would like to see as Valiant?
Well, I've got a mirror box, and I can't just ignore the fact that Murray was going to be in there, which would have been sensational. That comedy timer would have probably been even sharper and a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, and I think he would have, him acting against the Toons would have just been a perfect match between the two things. I think he would have been fantastic in it. I like to have seen Grodin, actually, because at this point there wasn't any like massive names, and I love him in It's Hilarious in Midnight Run, obviously one of your favourites. But I think he would have been like really good as that kind of like dishevelled, down and out PI. I think he would have been really good. I can see him in The Hat. I can see him talking to Dolores. I can see him like being pissed off with Roger. Like I think he would have been really good as well. So out of them, I would have said like Murray and maybe Grodin, and Hanks obviously would have been fantastic. Been like Rotten Edition, but just without the violence.
And cartoons.
Well, that small point as well.
Much like you, Westy, would have loved to have seen Charles Grodin in there. I do love him in Midnight Run, which came out, I believe, this year as well, 1988. And he's got really fantastic comic timing. And his deadpan style in Midnight Run, I think, is perfect for this. But I think I'm just looking at that from Bob Hoskins' point of view. It's a similar kind of style that I see. So I would like to have seen his take. But I wouldn't change Bob Hoskins. I think he's fantastic. The others, Murray would have been good, obviously. Chase definitely would have had sex with Jessica. 100%. 100%.
Is that even possible, though?
Ask the animators, I don't know.
Well, with Hoskins on board, the shoot lasted 8 months. So that's Hoskins for 8 months, imagining the majority of his co-stars. That's pretty tough going.
Well,
Yeah, I've got a quote from Hoskins about working on the film and all the blue screen that was involved, where he said, "I had to learn to hallucinate to do it. After doing it for 6 months, for 16 hours a day, I lost control of it and had weasels and rabbits popping out the wall at me."
Terrifying.
sounds like a really bad trip, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Horrible, that. Another great quote as well from his son, who like didn't speak to him for 2 weeks. And he's like, well, why? And then finally found out, that, well, you're acting with Bugs Bunny and you haven't introduced us to him. Like, I didn't get to meet him. Like, you were
That's great.
Isn't that just
What a story.
Fantastic.
That's so sweet, isn't it?
I know, it's
That's
lovely.
great.
That level of guilt, though, knowing that you could never fulfil that wish. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, how do you explain to him? I can't introduce you to him.
I'm going to have to ruin the whole film just so you get a glimpse of reality.
To help aid his method, Charles Fleischer, who plays Roger, he would dress in a full rabbit costume, floppy ears and all, and stand off camera and act the scene out with Bob Hoskins.
Yeah, I think
Wonderful man.
Hoskins said that Fleischer was completely nuts.
Yeah.
Which I suppose you've got to be to play Roger Rabbit.
Yeah. The cast were unanimous in the praise for Hoskins. Joanna Cassidy, who plays Dolores, she said he was masterful. He had a photographic memory. He was a genius.
Wow.
Genius, Hoskins. Good at science or something. Bob Hoskins had been performing since the early 70s, but it was his turn as Mafia Kingpin Harold Chand in The Long Good Friday that catapulted his career.
Yep.
He won a BAFTA for Mona Lisa in 1986, a couple of years before this. And after Roger Rabbit, did become quite a Hollywood star for a little while. He starred in things like Mermaids and Hook, but also he starred in Super Mario Brothers.
I knew you were going to say.
Don't mention that.
Yeah.
Moving on to the main man, the star of the show, whose purpose in life is to make people laugh. That's Charles Fleischer, who plays Roger Rabbit. Firstly, what do you think of the character of Roger Rabbit, John?
Well, he's fantastic, isn't he? He's a complete lunatic, and I love him. As a character, he doesn't feel out of his depth, sharing the screen with all these huge icons, and I think that's an achievement in itself, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Roger could have easily been swallowed whole as soon as Bugs Bunny, Mickey Mouse, or Daffy Duck come on the screen, but he's not, which I actually find quite incredible. And looks-wise, he seems to be a bit of a mix of everything. He looks a bit Looney Tunes, a bit Disney, a bit Tex Avery, but doesn't feel like a pastiche. He feels like Roger Rabbit.
Yeah,
But-
he's got his own style and identity, hasn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. And mostly, I just find him absolutely hilarious. loads of laugh out loud moments, and honestly, I think he's one of the funniest characters I've seen in a film. And with all those huge characters he's following that we've mentioned, which I think we should really be sitting here saying, yeah, Roger's all right, but he's no Looney Tunes, is he? But we're not. He holds his own. I think he's an absolutely fantastic creation.
Totally agree. I think that's the same with all of the characters, all of the new cartoon characters. Completely hold their own when they're up against these absolute icons of the screen.
Yeah.
What about you, Westy?
Yeah, exactly the same. I love how they've made him, very accessible in his colour palette, red, white and blue. So he's almost like he's got this patriotic vibe automatically. He's an entertainer. He's a classic entertainer. You don't know what period he's from particularly. He could fit into any single generation would find him funny. So I think he spans that whole time, the whole Looney Tunes, Warner Bros. And the whole Disney kind of time frame that they were still trying to find something. I think what they've done is they've found the absolute best elements of all these different characters and created this character that, I mean, at times is very, very close to just being annoying, and then he's so endearing. Do you know what I mean? He's just so close to pissing you off, but then he's lovely.
I always feel a massive amount of sympathy for Roger. Straight from the get-go, he breaks my heart. He gets a fridge slammed on his head, and Valiant's an utter shithead to him.
Yeah.
Barking orders and yanking his ears all the time. Terrible. And I always feel that huge pang of emotion when he's crying when he finds out about Jessica and the patty cake thing. Oh, God.
Slamming his head off the table.
There are certain parts, like you, Westy, where Roger skirts the line and wavers ever so slightly into being annoying or possibly annoying. But then he does bring it back because he's just a lovely, lovely guy.
He really is.
I really love him in the scene in the back of the bar where he's handcuffed to Eddie. He's dashing around all over the place looking through the spy hole, and he takes his hand out of the cuffs and he says that he couldn't take it out any time, only when it was funny. Great line.
Great delivery on that as well.
Yeah,
the delivery's always great. I love the bit where he's handcuffed to Eddie in Eddie's office, and the weasels turn up, and Roger dives into the bottom drawer on Eddie's desk, and then appears out the top drawer. And he says, "Remember, you never saw me."
Fantastic. I like that he's constantly fooling around. The camera's off him for a second, then goes back to him, and he's hanging off like a ceiling fan from his ears. Yeah. And then it goes back, and it comes back again, and he's sewing his head and laughing about it.
through his ears.
That is great.
It's like a file.
Yeah. Brilliant. Roger was this huge melting pot of different cartoon characters. The design is supposed to convey the production calibre of Disney, the character design of Warner's Looney Tunes, and the sense of humour of Tex Avery. His face is meant to resemble the Looney Tunes characters, his torso a Disney hero, with his overalls are a nod to Goofy, and his gloves, Mickey Mouse, his bow tie, Porky Pig. So, like you said, John, he's this big mishmash of different characters.
I didn't actually know that. I just took that from his look, so I never really spotted that they were the specific things they took, so they've done that really well, because I just think of Roger Rabbit when I see him.
Yeah, it's not obvious, is it?
No, not at all. In the early stages of development, early 80s, pre-fame Paul Rubens, if he ever had that much fame, was the voice of Roger. He would later get a little bit of fame playing Pee Wee Herman in Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure, Tim Burton film.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear a snippet of that dialogue?
I'd love to.
Here it is.
Oh, yes, sir. But wouldn't it be more helpful if I started to came along with you? Because what if maybe you gotta get into some more lots or something? Oh, okay.
You definitely would have skirted over the annoying line with that, like.
Yeah. Fleischer was perfect.
Yeah.
But when Who Framed Roger Rabbit was abandoned in the mid-80s, so was Rubens. And when it was picked back up, Fleischer was first choice. He said, unquestionably, I'm a stand-up comedian, so my purpose in life is to make people laugh. I related to Rog more than any human character I've ever played.
Wow.
Rog. Brilliant. Oh, I love that.
So what do you think of Fleischer's voice work? He also voiced Benny the Cab and a couple of the Weasels as well.
Yeah, Greasy and Psycho, wasn't he?
That's right, yeah.
Greasy he was like in the purple zoot suit.
No, Greasy's the one in the green suit, the Mexican.
So they call the Mexican Greasy.
Yeah. I know, that's outrageous, isn't it?
He's fantastic, and I didn't know it was this guy until you totally ruined Zodiac for us on the podcast.
That massive reveal on the Zodiac episode. You were like, really?
My only recollection of Fleischer is in Nightmare on Elm Street and Zodiac. So I can't really picture this guy in a big rabbit suit being like, Eddie! Just like flying around. His voice work is fantastic. Like we said, every line is perfectly delivered. When it's supposed to be funny, it's really funny. And then when he needs to be emotional, it's really emotional.
Oh, yeah, it is.
He hits every single beat to the 100%.
What about you, John?
I think he's incredible. Roger's voice is instantly recognisable, but doesn't sound like any classic Disney or Looney Tunes characters. It sounds totally unique. His delivery of the lines is always perfectly clear, and obviously there are a lot of comedy lines in there, and he nails every single one of them. I think he clearly 100% understands the genre of these classic cartoons. The newly created animated characters all stand up alongside the classic ones, and I think loads of that, especially with Roger, is down to Charles Fleischer. He did a fantastic job. Fantastic.
Yeah. I think what's really impressive is not just Roger, but the other characters' voices that he does. They're poles apart. Benny the Cab sounds completely different to Roger. I would not bet in a million years that was the same person.
No.
Even when they're sharing scenes, you can't even tell. Like, it's the same guy.
Yeah, that's
talking
right.
To himself. It's brilliant. I love Benny the Cab's voice as well. Like, it's just so.
Oh, he's
funny.
amazing.
It's so brilliant. It's exactly what you want that cab to sound like. It's just exactly
it
right.
is.
It's what De Niro's cab would sound like in Taxi Driver if they were talking.
Fleischer is a stand-up comic by trade. He's had loads of live-action roles, but as Westy mentioned, his standouts are his one-scene performances in Nightmare on Elm Street, and as we talked about a few episodes, his children role in Zodiac.
Amazing in that.
Finally on our cast list, Christopher Lloyd as the fearsome Judge Doom. So Westy, what do you think about Christopher Lloyd as Judge Doom?
Too far.
Too far?
Too far. Too scary.
Too much? Traumatized?
I'm going to flick onto my notes here, which is literally half a page, and then I'm going to tear it out and burn them. It's always freaked me out, no matter what role it is, whether he's the guy in the hat where he's coming in and he just, looks like the baddie out of Raiders, or when he turns into the Toon at the end. Oh, no. Still now, terrified, horrible, hate it. Great performance, wonderful, lovely, but too scary, too far for me as a kid, too far for me now.
Really?
It just hits every single note that scares me. Big hats, long coats, canes, horrible. And I was scared of Doc when I first saw Back to the Future when I was younger. And he just had that wide-eyed like craziness, but he was really endearing. In this, he's got that wide-eyed, horrible craziness. Never blinks throughout the whole film, which is terrifying in itself. So he's almost like Hannibal Lecter of Toontown. He's just this horrible spectre, and then when he runs and he's laughing, too much.
Just no.
It's too much.
John, is he too much for you?
He has some really good moments, like in Dolores' bar, and actually I remember I was absolutely petrified of him as a kid as well. So there is lots of good things there for sure. I think the main issue I have is that he's just not funny. At least not to me, and I think he should be. I mean, Roger's funny, the Weasels are funny, the cameos are funny, but Doom isn't funny at all. And I do think he's written to be funny at times. So Christopher Lloyd in Doom, I do think he's good. He feels like a bad guy. He has a presence. He is terrifying, but I wouldn't say he's fantastic. And of all the main cast, he's the one who I'd be least sorry to see get replaced if we could do that, which we can't.
No, we can't, unfortunately. Wow, I'm surprised at that.
Really?
I really like him. I love this like huge dark cloud that he casts over the whole of Hollywood. He's utterly terrifying. I'm not crying out for him to be funny. I think that it needs a bit of a balance, and he offers that. I like that he keeps a rubber glove on his person at all times, just in case he needs to dish out some Toon justice. It's genuinely affecting when he puts that weeping shoe in the dip. That's
despicable.
Awful.
It's horrible.
I still cannot watch it now. I used to have to watch the one that was edited for television where it just cuts to him with the steam all over his face. How bad do you want us to feel, Zemeckis? Like, how... I get it. I totally get it. But how bad do you want us to feel about this situation? It's like watching the knife scene at the end of Saving Private Ryan. It's like, it's that painful. But he does everything I hate. He puts that little shoe in the dip. Arsehole. He scratches on the blackboard. Despicable arsehole. He's horrible. I don't want to be anywhere near him. I really don't like him.
Those cries and whimpers of the shoe were voiced by Nancy Cartwright,
right.
who 1 year later would become the voice of Bart Simpson.
Oh, wow.
Bart Simpson, yeah.
Which is, do you think you can tell? I'll play it for you.
No.
So yeah, if you can handle it, here it comes.
Thanks for that. Putting us through it again when I thought I'd seen it for the last time. Oh,
I mean, it's pretty unrecognisable that is Bart Simpson, really, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah.
Well, yeah, it is.
Doom's ragtag entourage are the bunch of degenerates known as the Weasels, but originally Doom had a much bigger entourage. The Weasels' crew was bigger in numbers, 2 more to mimic the 7 dwarfs.
Right, lovely.
He also had a pet vulture that sat on his shoulder, and he also had a jury of kangaroos that would pull out individual letters from their pouches that would spell out "You're guilty."
That's terrifying.
I'm so pleased none of that happened.
So that's his kangaroo court then, I suppose.
That's right, yeah, absolutely,
exactly.
yeah, lovely. Lloyd said, a lot of people have come to me since Roger Rabbit opened to say that when they saw the movie when they were kids, they had nightmares afterwards, much like Westy.
Still now.
He said the first few Disney films like Bambi, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs gave me nightmares too, so I thought it was a bit of a reasonable payback.
Yeah, it's not really the same though. Those films like Bambi, they're like teaching kids about loss and grief. This is just terrifying for no reason.
This is a guy squealing as he gets run over by a steamroller.
Yeah, oh god, those noises are awful. Again, as we love to talk about, Christopher Lloyd wasn't first on the list. Uber bad guy Tim Curry was considered at first, but he was deemed too scary for Doom. Of course.
Of course.
He was too scary, and Lloyd wasn't doing what he does. What was Tim Curry doing?
What was he doing?
Going in the other direction, their thoughts went to John Cleese, which Basil Fawlty
Surely
killing Toon
not.
shoes.
Poking him in the eye.
Just hit them with a massive branch.
So then they went to Christopher Lee. He turned it down. He would have been great.
He would have been great, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And then also in the frame, Sting. Insane.
Terrible.
He's wearing them pants that he had on in June.
Oh,
I mean, that would have been terrifying for a whole different reason. Yeah, I've got a few more names other than the one you mentioned there. Robin Williams, Vincent Price, John Lithgow, Willem Dafoe, John Malkovich, Gene Hackman, Richard Gere. The one I like the most, who I think would have been absolutely fantastic, is Michael Keaton.
Of course, Keaton. Brilliant.
I mean, imagine Keaton, Hanks and Roger together at last in this. That would have been incredible. Keaton would have been fantastic.
It's a different film.
It would have been great. He would have been perfect for this sort of film. He would have been terrifying to kids and hilarious to adults. He would have been superb.
Yeah. In my opinion, any bad guy should be John Lithgow. In any film. We've talked about Christopher Lloyd in our Back to the Future podcast. That episode is available in our podcast archive, exclusive for our patrons. So if you want to dive into the archive, check out the ADRM Patreon.
Go for it.
Sure.
Lloyd made his debut in Cuckoo's Nest, appeared in the slasher film Schizoid opposite Klaus Kinski in 1980. He appeared in other films after this, The Addams Family and Suburban Commando. Absolute classic.
Yeah, fantastic. He's great in the Dream Team, though.
Yeah, with Keaton.
With Keaton, yeah.
There's no doubting that his most famous roles, though, are Doc Brown in Back to the Future and Judge Doom in Roger Rabbit.
Definitely.
Yeah, Addams Family.
So there is some doubting then, just to be difficult. So a mixture of live action and animated characters combining seamlessly to help bring Who Framed Roger Rabbit to life amazingly well.
Yeah.
The middle.
Back to the action. Marvin Acme has been murdered and Roger is in the frame. We're picking it up as Valiant goes back to his office. He has an encounter with baby Herman outside and finds Roger hiding in his bed. Before he has a chance to think, the Weasels are on the scene. So John, what do you think about this scene?
Oh, it's great. I mean, first off, Valiant is interacting with Roger and then the Weasels non-stop. And Hoskins portrays it brilliantly, but the animation work is phenomenal. Unbelievable. I totally buy that Roger and Valiant are in the same room together. It's absolutely brilliant.
Completely.
And as a scene, it's one of the best in there, I think. Love it when Valiant pulls his bed down and you can see Roger's big feet under the covers. Absolutely fantastic. And obviously, in terms of the plot, it's one of the most important in the film. It's the point that Valiant and Roger start working together. Brilliant scene. And Roger is hilarious non-stop in it.
Yeah, he's great. I like when he's saying that he's asked the fireman, the butcher, the baker. They didn't know where Valiant's office was, but the liquor store guy, he knew. Great. What about you, Westy?
Yeah, there's so many things to like in this scene, isn't there? I mean, it's one of them like standout scenes from the film. It's the first time you get the interaction between, well, the real interaction, the physical interaction between them. And I love the bit when he just gets really over the top emotional, and he's like, "I'm out of here," and then he's straight in the closet.
Yeah, classic. Comedy basics.
One of the, yeah, you kick yourself for not expecting it, and like still didn't expect it now, and you're like, "That's the closet." And then when he's inside the detective suit, and he's like got a square face, and he's like, just totally takes a piss out of him. There's so many things to like. Love it when the weasels turn up, and I still think to myself now, I forgot how, because he hasn't got a key for the cuffs. It's like, how's he going to do this? I totally forgot that he puts them in that dish of water. He's like washing the dishes at the same. Oh, it's not the dishes. He's got his thing. It's the whites.
My lingerie.
My lingerie. Yeah, brilliant.
I think it's great. Firstly, that Hoskins is in this scene with 6 other characters who just weren't there during film, so he's got to act all of this out by himself. But like you said, John, the animation's amazing. Real standout for me is when Roger's in the sink.
Yeah.
He's coming up and he's spurting the water out and then back, and Valiant's slapping him on the back. That just works perfectly.
It does.
It's absolutely seamless. And I have a huge soft spot for the weasels.
They are great.
One of the greatest cinematic criminal crews ever. Love them.
One of the greatest collection of stereotypes as well, though, let's be honest.
I like that about it, though. I like that they've got their own individual identities. Oh, the leader's this like hip talking tough guy, and the rest have all got those identities. They're great. The names aren't mentioned in the film, but they do have names.
All right.
Do you know what they are?
Go on then.
I don't know all of them. I know some of them.
So the dude in the green suit is called Greasy.
Right.
Or Greasy. Wheezy is the chain smoker. Psycho, the guy in the straitjacket. Stupid, the one in the beanie hat.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't take long to think of that name, did it? And finally, Smart Ass. He's the leader of the pack.
7 dwarves' names as well, then, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love the opening of this scene as well, when you've got Herman there. It's like with genuine concern. Like, you know, he didn't do this, and then the woman that he's with, he's just a chauvinistic pig, isn't he? He's like, oh, toots, and he's just like, oh, it's horrible. But then when he drops a cigar and he starts crying, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Wailing.
But it's that line I think was lifted straight out of the novel when he's like, I've got a 40-year-old lust and a 3-year-old dinky.
Outrageous.
Outrageous.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of that line, to be honest.
I don't know what to make of that. I really love Baby Herman. He's hilarious. But when he says things like that, it's just weird.
I think Baby Herman's a good character, but I'm not sure how much I like him. I do like that he goes to Valiant to defend Roger. I like it when he calls him his friend as well. But he treats that poor girl who's pushing him around like absolute shit.
Yeah.
Calls him a dumb broad.
And tells her to go and get a racing form.
What I do like is I know that Richard Williams, who was the animation director, loved Baby Herman, and he insists on personally animating every frame of the character, so it's all drawn by Richard Williams. Which I like that about him.
Yeah, nice, but he is super weird character.
Yeah. And another thing I love about this scene as well, like with the combination of the live action, when Smartass is talking to Valiant just before he leaves, and he's like, we'll hang you out to dry, and then he flicks the water.
Yeah,
that water, it's just, how on earth did they do that and get that timing right? It's brilliant. Just, it's superb.
I love the moment where they first come into the room when the sort of machine gun the lock, and then the door swings open. We haven't seen them yet, and then they all sort of just snake in the room at the same time. It's a fantastic shot.
The guy in the green suit, Greasy, says, looks like he gave us the slip, huh, boss? Fantastic. After this, Roger hides out at Dolores' bar, and Valiant finds out that unless Acme's will shows up by midnight, Cloverleaf will own Toontown. We're back at Dolores' bar as Roger can't resist the urge to entertain, which leads Doom and the Weasels straight to him. Westy, this scene at the bar?
It's really like a classic saloon type of situation, isn't it? Where you're just kind of walking in, and you've got Angelo that you were introduced to, and you've got all these other kind of like real down and outs, and you just think that but they all totally redeem themselves within this scene. I think this scene's really, really good. I love the way Roger's entertaining everybody.
Yeah,
and that it's just got that record, and then the record sticks, so he's smashing the plates as it sticks. I think there's so many really good bits in this. And I love the fact that they're at that spy hole, and Valiant's like looking through, and he's like, "We've got away with it, Roger." And he turns out, and he's just like, "He's going to blow any minute." Foreshadows back Maroon's office with the drink. He's like, "I think you're going to want a drink." I don't.
That's genius.
You do. I don't. You don't. This kind of like
the old switcheroo.
Psychology. The old switcheroo. It's fantastic. So I think there's a lot of things you get rewarded from this scene for a lot of things.
John,
this is my favourite scene in the film.
Wow.
Oh, wow! There it is.
Great in terms of being a key moment in the plot, and there is a bit of tension in there, but it's the Roger show for me. He's brilliant and funny for about 10 minutes non-stop. It's great when he's on the bar singing the Looney Tunes song and smashing the plates over his head. Then the shaving the haircut bit I love. And Valiant says, "I don't know who's Toonie, you or Doom." And he turns around and Roger's having a complete meltdown. He has a twisting around themselves.
Yeah.
My favourite bit though, maybe in the entire film, is that old switcheroo that Westy talked about, where Doom's holding Roger over the dip and Valiant fools Roger into taking the drink. And Roger's like,
he doesn't want the drink.
And Roger's like, "When I say I do, that means I do." It's absolutely amazing. It's my favourite line in the film. I absolutely love it.
He chucks it back as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, straight down.
I think Doom's intro into this is awesome. He comes in and he says, "I'm looking for a murderer." And holy shit, it's full of fear, and his face is ashen white. Fantastic. And then Angelo feigns that he knows where the rabbit is, and he says, "Say hello, Harvey."
I love that call back to Harvey as well. Like, it's great.
Yeah, it's great. And Doom looks at him like stony faced, and then he shoots him this like ridiculous maniacal smile, and everybody stops laughing.
Yeah.
It's great.
Oh, it's awful.
I do love that it's inbuilt in Roger to entertain, and Doom knows this, which is why he gives it the old shave and a haircut routine. Roger's freaking out in the back, like you said, and he can't take it anymore because he's got to complete the gag. He's a performer. He comes bursting out 2 bits that call and response.
He's loving it as well.
Despite the circumstances, he's fully performing.
And he doesn't just come in, he like smashes through a wall.
And then they get in the cab. Benny is just absolutely amazing. Jive talking like a taxi driver does. How about this weather? And what about those Brooklyn Dodgers?
Are they bombs or what?
For me, Valiant's fully immersed in a cartoon world here in this car chase. It's so much fun.
Yeah. There's some great dialogue in this. When Benny turns around to Roger and he's like, "Hey Roger, what do you call in the middle of a song?" Just because the bridge is coming up.
Yeah, that's so good.
That's so clever.
That's so good. Yeah, really, really good. And that, your quote at the start, "I'm going to ram him," those are exactly the same words that Biff uses just before he slams into the manure truck in Back to the Future.
Oh, lovely.
So the mystery is beginning to reveal itself, but there are still a few missing pieces yet to find.
The crew.
Going to take some time to look at the crew work on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. As we normally do, we're going to look at the writing first. Jeffrey Price and Peter S. Seaman wrote Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Westy, what do you think of the writing on the film?
I think we've kind of touched on it earlier on when we were talking about the plot and whether that's too confusing, but I think there's some really, really clever writing here. I think it's a really complicated plot. And on top of that, they've interweaved some incredible dialogue, some incredible comedy moments.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a really strong screenplay that I think from the undertaking of this project, I think you have to have something that you're reading and go, yeah, this is going to work. And I think just on the page, this would sound like it would work. I think it would be laugh out loud funny for some of the dialogue and some of the lines. And again, the plot is fairly complicated, but I think they do a good job of layering it up. So it does need multiple viewings.
It does, yeah.
It needs that level of attention, and I think they weren't scared to shy away from that and make it overly simplistic. There's a million ways this could go when you've got all of the cartoon characters ever made in Toon Camera. You could take this anywhere, but where they did take it, I think, is really, really good, and where they based it is really, really good and very, very original. I think it's one of the most original pieces of writing in Hollywood, really.
Wow. High praise. John?
Yeah, I think the writing's really, really good. Has a plot which makes sense, the unravelling murder mystery. The main characters, as we've mentioned, are all excellent, all have distinct personalities, and the motivations are always really clear. Even the secondary characters are great, like the weasels we've talked about.
Yeah.
There's loads of zingers, one-liners, and visual comedy in there. I think the concept as a whole is absolutely brilliant. This idea of a 1940s style noir mystery as the main plot to reflect the time period, I absolutely love it. So I think on a whole, yeah, it is a unique piece from the writing point of view, I think. Fantastic job.
It's flawless for me. It's got to juggle quite a few genres, and I think it does that really, really well. The gags are thick and fast, but it allows for this fantastic arc of Valiant and gives so much meat on the bones to that character, and it's got some really deeply affecting emotional beats as well.
Yeah.
It's super smart, like whip-smart dialogue, and that's one of the main reasons that it's endured. It's multi-layered to cater all ages. Kids come for the animation and the funny action and all that kind of stuff, but then adults, that noir plot. I'm a fan of noir anyway, and that's just perfect. I love that. Absolutely love that. Loads of layers.
And everything feels of the time as well. Like, none of them gags feel like an 89 gag. Like, okay, that makes sense without it sounding old school or cliched.
Yeah, I think so much of it is just like timeless gags.
Timeless,
You can watch it in 50 years' time and it'll still be funny.
Yeah, definitely. There were quite a few changes to the screenplay from the first draft to the final draft. During the writing process, things changed around, characters came in, characters' motivations changed as well. At certain points in the various drafts, Jessica was pinned as the villain.
Right.
And then Baby Herman was pinned as the villain. Mm-hmm. Then Doom had this big reveal that he was the hunter who killed Bambi's mother, which would have made him even more terrifying.
That is too far.
Couldn't handle that. I couldn't handle it. Bringing the rifle out at the end.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Oh, don't remind me, bloody hell.
And even Roger died in one of the screenplay drafts.
Yeah.
You can't kill off Roger.
Didn't he die in the book?
Yeah, I think some of them changes there are coming from the actual book it was based on, who censored Roger Rabbit. The filmmakers moved away from it a lot. I mean, sometimes when we talk about changes movies have made from books, they often make them worse, but I don't think that's the case yet. Do you want to hear some of the differences between the movie and the book?
Go on.
Go for it.
So in the book, the Toons aren't cartoon characters, but comic strip characters. So from newspapers and things like that, rather than being TV and movie stars. I mean, that's not as good.
No. No, there's a 1 point.
Have you got the handicap?
In the film, Roger's about 3 feet tall, maybe.
Yeah.
In the book, he's 6 feet tall.
Terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
It's like Harvey in it, but in real.
Yeah.
Also in the book, Roger enjoys a sup now and again, so he's a drinker.
Okay.
You know what the booze is called that he drinks?
No.
Toonshine.
Oh, brilliant. They should have kept that.
That is brilliant, to be fair.
Yeah, genius.
In the book, Jessica hates Roger and leaves him for his boss. I don't like that. I love that Jessica's totally in love with Roger.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And also, like you mentioned there, Luke, Roger dies halfway through the book. He gets shot to death. Nobody wants to see that.
No, that's outrageous,
Absolutely
isn't
not.
it? Ridiculous.
Gary Wolfe, who wrote the books, has written sequels in novel form to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he preferred the movie version so much that he completely disregarded his original novel. So his second book starts with Jessica Rabbit waking up from a bad dream. That was the first book. And then he writes it as a sequel to the film.
Cop out.
Yeah, massive cop out. If somebody's totally bought into that book and loves it, what the fuck? Also, I think in the book, Jessica was a former porn star.
Too much.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's not going to make it.
Definitely. That sounds great. I think I'm going to check this out.
The title of the film is a question. Who framed Roger Rabbit? But there isn't a question mark in the title of the film. Do you know why?
I do. It's to do with the studio, isn't it?
Yeah, it's apparently like a kiss of death in Hollywood to put a question mark in a film title. If you do that, then the film's going to bomb.
Right.
This film was never going to bomb.
Not in your eyes.
The writers, Price and Seaman, were huge fans of Roman Polanski's Chinatown. I mean, it's not surprising, is it?
No.
Like you said, Westy, it wears Chinatown on its sleeve.
Definitely.
Considering the underhand, shady dealings of the Cloverleaf subplot, they got the idea of Doom's big freeway dreams from one of the unused drafts to the sequel of Chinatown.
Right, okay.
Yeah, amazing.
I know as well that whole subplot is actually based in real life facts as well. So Doom has this grand plan to get rid of the red car trolleys.
Yeah.
And in the US, in the 1940s, corporations got together to buy out public transport companies to increase demand for cars.
Right.
So that's based on that, to give it a bit of groundedness, I suppose. In terms of the film, I do like it as a plot thread. It adds a nice twist, and it is very much Chinatown as well, I think, in how it feels.
Very much.
Yeah, very much.
Also, that version of the Chinatown sequel was going to be called Cloverleaf.
Oh,
nice.
really?
Yeah.
Lovely.
So was that a sequel to The Two Jakes, or was that a draft for that film?
It was a draft for The Two Jakes.
Right, okay, nice. I think when I looked at the writers, I was thinking, well, obviously these guys have got something as a partnership. They must have done something else. And I don't think anything else they've done really stands up to this film at all. I mean, they did Doc Hollywood with J. Fox.
J. Fox.
Which is good, but I mean, it's just because J. Fox is in it, let's be honest.
Yeah,
And then
definitely.
they did one of the most famous cinematic bombs of all time in Wild Wild West.
Oof.
As a script, like, oh, Jesus, that was so confused.
Embarrassing.
They kind of come round and, well, yeah, really embarrassing. And then they came round, redeemed themselves with The Grinch Who Stole Christmas.
All right.
Right, okay.
I don't know if they wrote most of that because Jim Carrey riffed, I would say 90%.
Of course
it.
he did.
Yeah.
So based on a Dr. Seuss novel, they can't really go wrong. So there's nothing holds up to the level of writing here. I think this was them finding something they were incredibly comfortable with adapting, and a really original idea, and I don't think anyone else could have done it apart from these guys. Not because they're just an unprecedented talent, but I just think that they were just the right people to nail this at the right time.
They should have just done this and quit. One and done.
Quit while they're ahead.
Yeah, they should do a sequel to Wild Wild West. Do Wild Wild West 2, but they wake up from a nightmare, which is the first film.
I'll be up for that, yeah.
Finally on our crew list is Richard Williams, head animator on the project and the one who gets the most praise from fans. John, the floor is yours. What do you think of Williams' work?
For all the great work done by a lot of people in Roger Rabbit, Richard Williams and his team is the star of the show by a mile for me. Mm-hmm. The whole film lives or dies by how well the live-action animation blend works, and they get it working absolutely brilliantly. I know that from the start, before they shot anything, Richard Williams set out 3 rules that had to be followed in order for the film to work at the level he wanted it to. Mm-hmm. So first, he said when shooting a scene, the camera had to move as much as possible, so the toons don't look like they just pasted onto a background.
Yeah.
Secondly, he said he wanted shadows and lighting to be incorporated into the illustrations to a level that had never been done before. And third, he wanted the toons to interact with real-world objects as much as possible. So like the scene in Valiant where he picks up Roger by the ears, or when Smart-Ass, like Westy mentioned, splashes the water, or when the penguin waiters are carrying real-life trays. There's hundreds of details in there like that. And those were his 3 rules.
Amazing.
When you said smart ass like Westy there, I was like, what? Oh, yeah. That's smart ass.
So, what do you think, Westy? Oh, smart ass.
Well, what can you say about it? It is. John's absolutely right. It's hinged on this. You know, if this guy fucks up, there's not a film. You know, if he doesn't concentrate on it to the level that he needs to concentrate on it, then it's just not going to perform at all. And if you see through any of this, any scene, any shot, if any shot becomes obvious, it's ruined, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think the level of pressure and the level of determination is probably 4 or 5 times that of Zemeckis. It has to be, to direct and deliver this level of animation. Just what he delivered in sense of scale is unparalleled, really. And the thing is that he is up there on IMDb as co-director with Zemeckis, but if you say to anyone who's Richard Williams, they'll just be like, I don't know. And that's a real fucking tragedy, especially what he's done here. It's a real achievement.
It is a huge achievement. This work on this film is absolutely mesmerising. And I think it's only something that you really are able to appreciate as an adult. I think as a kid, I didn't really think twice about it, of course. One of the key things that I think makes the animation as effective as it is that there's a lot made about it, but the eye lines match between the real characters and the toons. Mm-hmm. You can notice it in all scenes if you're looking for it. And the reason that you're not looking for it is because you don't notice it. You're totally immersed in the film.
You totally buy it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that the real people and the toons coexist. Think about, you mentioned earlier on, John, the animation in Mary Poppins. I know it was 24 years beforehand, but the principle's kind of similar. Those penguins look great, but they're separated from the live action, and you can tell.
Yeah.
With this, I'm not even questioning that for a second.
It's incredibly immersive.
We mentioned the different characters, the different new cartoon characters that are introduced into the film. Do you have a favourite, Westy?
I love the bullets. The bullets that go in the gun that Valiant opens up.
I love them.
Love them.
Got that gun from Yosemite Sam, hasn't he? It's sort of like engraved in there for getting him out of a particularly sticky incident.
Nice.
But I love that reference of cowboys and Indians. And I think my favourite of all of them is the one that obviously doesn't fuck up, because the other ones are like, where did he go?
Yeah. He went that way.
It's like dum-dums. But when he fires that Indian bullet, he pulls out that massive tomahawk and he just smashes the bottle. It's just, for me, it's such a wonderful moment. I piss myself every single time I see it. Like, it's fantastic. So over the top. It's just really funny. I love all the new tunes that they brought in. Like John said before, they all stand up. Even bullets fired out of a gun.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
And they're still funny.
John?
You only see him for a few seconds, but I'm going for in the Ink and Paint Club, where we see the octopus bartender.
All right.
He's carrying 8 drinks at once, obviously. Mm-hmm. That always makes me smile, but I like how they did that as well. So the octopus is obviously a toon, and the 8 drinks he's carrying are all real-life glasses. So when they filmed that, there was no octopus, obviously, and they had 8 puppeteers on the set who were all operating and moving the glasses in the way they needed to, and then the octopus was just thrown in afterwards. He's
Brilliant.
on screen for about 5 seconds, but that just shows the lengths that they went to make it all as real feeling as possible. Just incredible lengths.
It is. I'm a fan of the Mexican weasel with the green suit. Name is Greasy. Fantastic. He's my favourite. One of the best cartoon characters ever for me. This guy, I love him. I absolutely
30
love
seconds of screen time. He's so endearing.
He's so good. When Doom murders the Toon shoe that we've talked about, you can hear him off camera just saying, "That's one dead shoe, huh, boss?" Loving it. Near the end where Jessica says that she's got the will, and he says, "I'll handle this one," and he gets his hand caught in this massive bear trap, a booby trap. Brilliant.
So 326 animators worked on the film, and I know that absolutely painstaking work went into it from them. The process is pretty fascinating, I think, if you've not heard it.
Yeah, go for it.
So they shot the film in its entirety, with the actors acting against blue screen and props, as we mentioned. Then every single frame of footage that included the toon or animation was printed as a still photograph. An animator then put tracing paper over the top of the photograph and drew the illustration for that frame onto the tracing paper as an outline in the right place. The outline was then coloured to make the final illustration, and that final illustration was then composited back onto the original frame with an optical printer. I mean, by today's standard, with CGI and digital effects, it's all pretty rudimentary stuff, but it just looks so great. So every single frame has an animation drawn on it. It's just mind-blowing. The amount of work that must have taken is astonishing.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Richard Williams said that easily over 1 million illustrations were done for the film.
Jesus Christ. Because when you say frame, it's literally a frame. If there's any movement on that frame at all, then it's a new drawing. A brand new drawing.
Every time. And this is assuming as well that they get it right first time. There'll definitely be moments where they do the animation and think, that's not right, I'll have to do it again, and stuff like that. It's just ridiculous amounts of work.
Painstaking.
I think the actual animation schedule was twice as long as the shooting schedule.
It lasted 14 months, something like that.
Blimey.
14 months drawn cartoons. Oh, fucking nightmare.
Yeah, you're talking like 24 frames a second, which is what this would have been shot at. So there's 24 drawings every second.
Yeah.
So that's
ridiculous. Insane. So, based on that, Westy, Richard Williams explains the level of work required perfectly in this quote. He said, if there were 5 weasels in a shot, each weasel had to have a rim light and 3 sets of black mats given tones. This was so that when ILM threw the cells out of focus, it would curve, given a 3-dimensional look. Mm-hmm. Each of the 5 extra bits for each weasel would have to be separately painted. So that's 25 pieces of artwork per frame, 24 frames per second, 600 drawings per second. Unbelievable stuff.
Jesus Christ.
It's not just about the animation. So say if Roger's in a scene and his arm's moving, you've got to obviously animate his arm moving, but if the camera's moving at the same time, you've got to reflect the camera movement as well. The camera getting closer, the camera getting further away. It's just incredible.
Yeah. It's the perspective of the whole thing. It's all going to change every single time.
So this is 320-odd animators working for 14 months, and it was a case of all work and no play for some of the animators, as in the scene where Eddie and Jessica are thrown from Benny the Cab near the end. Oh, yeah. There were a few frames where it's obvious that Jessica isn't wearing any underwear. the animators got a little bit creative. What a bunch of pervos.
So what can you say?
It was just flesh-coloured, wasn't it?
I'm not going to spell it out for you, John.
Birds and the Bees lecture.
They replaced the frames with like white paint, so it looks like she was wearing something underneath.
The rule among animators generally was that when blending live action with animation was to keep the camera still. Any movement generally makes it look obvious that there are two worlds here. The animation looks as if it's on a different plane, almost in the forefront of the field of view. Williams said animators did this because they were lazy. It's twice as much work to keep the camera moving and fitting in the animation seamlessly into the frame, but the results, I mean, in this film alone, speak for themselves how effective that process is.
Yeah, well, that's the first of those 3 rules I was talking about. Those 3 rules I mentioned earlier, the opposite was actually the rules that the animators used to follow, and he basically just flipped them all around. So
incredible.
It would be the camera can't move. He said the camera has to move. They can't interact with real-world objects. He said they have to interact with real-world objects. Yeah. Just completely turns the industry on its head, essentially, by doing that. Yeah,
completely, and makes the film what it is, and why we're talking about it. The amount of detail was and is called, as you mentioned, John, bumping the lamp, and it's exemplified by the scene at Dolores' bar when Valiant and Roger are in handcuffs. Eddie hits his head off the hanging lamp a couple of times, which creates this light and shade as the light swings back and forth. Now, in live action, that's fine. Obviously, that gets picked up by the camera. But the issue with animation, the lightness and the shade needs to be captured and blended perfectly with the live action. So every single frame has to be drawn a different way to accommodate that swing and light. When you consider that lamp's constantly swinging, loads of frames like we've talked about, it doesn't need to be in that scene. Take it out and nobody would bat an eyelid, but the animators wanted to make it as realistic as possible to go above and beyond what is expected. So in the industry, the term bump the lamp means to go above and beyond what's expected. So kind of similar to what we do on this podcast, fellas. We're bumping the lamp every 2 weeks, right?
That's one term for it, yeah.
We've got a question from one of our patrons, Adam Yates. That's the benefit. You follow us on Patreon, and then you get the chance to be part of the show and ask us a question, obviously within reason. Now, Adam says that he's not a fan of the movie, but he does appreciate that it broke ground in the world of animation and live-action animation. And he asks us, which film do you think, after this one, did the most for the genre of the animated movie?
It's hard to go anywhere else apart from the likes of Toy Story and Pixar. It's just the obvious choice, isn't it? But to me, it's a different kettle of fish. Like, Pixar is the evolution of this technique, I guess. Yeah. It's about creating an animated world real, whereas this has a real world that needs to incorporate an animated element. So I think this is, again, completely different. So I don't know. I haven't seen anything else like this since that's made us believe it as much as this does. So to be honest, I think it kind of set the bar so high, and there was so much work and so much energy put into this that they just had to go, right, well, how can we do something that's equally as impressive but less labour intensive? So let's make Toy Story, I guess.
I think Japanese animators deserve a special mention. I mean, stuff like Akira, which came out the same year as Roger Rabbit. The animations there are incredible. That's full animations, but they raised the bar massively as well. I think they had something like 3 times as many animation frames in a shot as what was being done before. They created about 50 new colours specifically for the film, so that raised the bar. And then Studio Ghibli with stuff like Spirited Away, which is maybe the best animated film I've ever seen. Absolutely incredible. But I agree with Westy. In terms of Hollywood, my absolute favourite and the most important of the last 30 years is surely Toy Story. A massive milestone in animation. It was the first film to be completely animated on a computer. What's maybe most impressive about it, though, I think, is that when you read reviews from the time when Toy Story came out, despite all that groundbreaking stuff and the technical innovations, that's mentioned in a footnote, really. The glowing reviews tend to focus on the storytelling and the characters of, like, Woody and Buzz. Pixar, for me, are the best storytellers of the last 30 years. I think they're fantastic, and Toy Story, for its importance, I think is their best, and Hollywood's most influential animation of at least the last 50 years. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. It's Toy Story all the way. Like the flag waver for Pixar, film that added another dimension to Disney. Animation was groundbreaking, and Pixar knocking it out of the park with every release as well. Incredible.
Consistency's incredible.
Phenomenal.
So the screenplay is excellent, but we can't underestimate the painstaking animation skills of Richard Williams and his crew. Time absolutely well spent.
Fantastic.
Definitely.
The end.
Nearing the end of the film, Valiant makes the connection to RK Maroon and Acme's death. Maroon gets bumped off, with Jessica running away from the scene of the crime. Valiant in hot pursuit and follows Jessica into the shady underworld that is Toontown. So, John, Eddie in Toontown, what do you think?
This is where they go all in, isn't it?
Yeah.
All animations, and Valiant's the only real life thing on the screen for a good 10-15 minutes, and we stay there in Toontown just the right amount of time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse talking to each other, that's pretty great.
Brilliant.
Tweety Pie and Droopy showing up as well, I love that.
Yeah.
And Lena Hyena, obviously, is
she's amazing.
Very memorable.
Yeah.
I like all those bits when Valiant goes from one crazy situation to another for a few minutes. But for me, the storytelling wheels start to fall off a little bit here.
Okay.
After Valiant gets away from Lena when she runs into the wall, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
He just happens to hear a noise round the corner, which just happens to be exactly what he's looking for. And I know it probably shouldn't, but that bit really bothers me, to be honest. It always takes me out of the film. So it is great to visit Toontown, and we absolutely had to at some point. Absolutely had to, obviously. But I think it's the right choice to come back to the real world for the climax.
Yeah, I agree. I feel as though Toontown's this like massive daunting place, and Eddie gets the gun out with the cartoon characters, and he's like psyching himself up, and he goes to take a drink, and that's when his character arc's almost complete. And he's psyching himself up to go in, and then as soon as we enter Toontown, we're in this song and dance act, Smile, Darn You Smile, this massive production.
Yeah.
But it's like all technicolor and it's like drug hazy. It's almost nightmarish.
It's crazy. That song, Smile, Darn You Smile, that was the animators singing that, so they got their little moment in the limelight as well.
Oh, nice.
Lovely.
I love the moment where he's driving through the tunnel and he comes up to the curtains, the entrance into Toontown, and as they open, it does the Looney Tunes. Bow.
That's
great.
Brilliant. That tunnel that he drives through as well is the same one from Back to the Future 2, where there's the hoverboard after the sports almanac.
Oh, fantastic.
Great scene, that.
So, yeah, Zemeckis loves that location.
Of course he does. Dining out on Back to the Future forever.
Yeah, I've been there before. Let's just use that again. But yeah, I'm exactly the same as you guys. It's a bit like a real sugar headache. Like you've just had too much. and it's like, I need to get the fuck out of here. But it is fantastic. But to me, it seems a very unpredictable place, very fast, very loud, very much as you would expect it to be. And it hits every expectation. You just think, well, that's exactly what you would expect Toontown to be from every single element of it. And like you say, it goes from this really happy, smiley Wizard of Oz kind of location to then a car crash, and then you're in the middle of downtown, and it's really unpredictable. But that bit works for me. I mean, I'm not going to get into Lena the Hyena, but I love Droopy in this. I love Droopy in the lift, and I love like how fast it goes up and how fast it goes down. And it's just he's like, your floor, sir. It's just
have a nice day, sir.
And just such right in his face.
What a dick.
He's great. And that bit that John was touching on there, that kind of pulls you out of it. I totally believe that, because I find Toontown to be so unpredictable that if you just turn a corner, turn your back on it, it can rearrange itself. It's almost like Inception, where it's like, you know, he can pick up the road and she can run into the wall, and he can like manipulate any part of anything, and it all feels like really unpredictable. So when you're there, it's almost impossible to be a private investigator or a detective in Toontown, because it'll own you. It'll just basically manipulate you to do what it wants to do, because it's toons and they can't be trusted. So I totally get that element. But you're absolutely right. We're in there just enough time. Any longer, and I would think, one, they were milking it, two, it would just be a little bit too hard to keep up with.
It's an absolute death trap, Toontown, for a human being.
It is. It's a nightmare. Tweety Pie totally stitches Eddie up.
It really does.
No more pities.
And so do Bugs and Mickey Mouse as well, to give him the spare, and it's a spare tyre. And, and Bugs goes, ain't I a stinker? Couple of dicks. And you mentioned Lena Hyena as well. That reveal is brilliant. He thinks he's got Jessica, and it's her silhouette, her outline and everything, and then it turns out to be this rampant gargoyle. It's brilliant.
It really unsettles me again. It's another one of them moments where I'm just, and then she keeps coming after him, and when she scuttles up the street, and she's like, I just feel sick. I'm like, I can't get out of there quick enough. I'm like, Eddie, just get out of there. Just forget about the whole case and get the fuck out of there. It's terrifying.
She's just been waiting in that room for how long? Just for a man to come in. Yoo-hoo, lover boy! There's this truly bizarre deleted scene which happens earlier on in the action, but it ends in Toontown, where Doom catches Valiant snooping around the Ink and Paint Club, and he and his goons send him to Toontown. They send him to Toontown, and they put an animated pig head on top of his own head.
What?
So he's screaming with this pig head on his own head. It's petrifying.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
And then there's a scene straight after it where he remedies it by being in the shower, and he puts turpentine on it, and it shrivels, and you see the head in like the water in the bath, but it's just a tiny face with eyeballs, and the eyeballs get sucked down the plug hole.
What the hell?
Really frightening.
Well, you can see this scene, can you?
Yeah, it's online. Check it out. I mean,
No.
you'll have nightmares afterwards, but
No thanks. The other bit I love in Toontown as well is when Eddie's walking down that back alley and his shadow's there and he sneezes and it's like, goes on time. I absolutely love that.
Wonderful.
Really, really good. Lovely little bits. There's just so many bits like that. It's so clever.
You said, John, there that it takes you out a little bit when you see he's the noise and then he goes around the corner and it's what he's after. I feel a similar way when Benny the Cab shows up, because it sticks out like a sore thumb, which is ironic actually, because he says to Roger and Eddie just like a throwaway line right at the end of that scene, if you ever need a ride, just stick out your thumb.
Right.
And Eddie quite obviously says, no, it's this way, and then Benny appears. It just feels a little bit like shoehorned in.
Yeah.
I quite like that because you got that real big close up on the thumb and like
massive close up.
But when you see Benny, you're just like, yes, great. There's no way I'm going to be disappointed by him getting in there. It's Benny again. Lovely. However he gets in there, I don't really care.
So as we delve further into Toontown, Doom captures Eddie and Jessica and takes them to the ribbon cutting event at the Acme factory, where we get one hell of a finale involving 5,000 gallons of heated dip. John, the ending at the Acme factory.
On paper, the ideas are fantastic. There's loads of things I like. The weasels are in there.
Brilliant.
Great.
Yeah.
I like the jeopardy we have where Roger and Jessica are tied up, hanging from the ceiling, and the dip's being shot at them. I like that as an idea.
Love it.
Doom's big reveal as being the toon that killed Valiant's brother. That's great. And then he gets run over by a steamroller like Otto in A Fish Called Wanda. I love that.
Brilliant.
I say on paper I like it because those things are all really good, but as the climax of the film, it does feel just a little bit underwhelming to me sometimes as well. I think Doom's reveal as being the toon that killed Valiant's brother, I'm not sure that has the impact that Zemeckis wanted to have, not on me anyway. I mean, it is good, it's a great idea, everything's all tied up. It just doesn't crescendo as a climax in the way that I know Zemeckis can do, and that I've seen him do a lot of times before, which is a shame, but it is really good. But I think, like I was saying before, the storytelling sometimes lets the film down a little bit for me, and I think that becomes apparent for me here.
Wow. Westy?
It's the same for me. It is a little bit underwhelming, but I just think that's the location in which it's set. I think it's quite a boring location, even though on paper, like John said, it's the Acme factory. There's going to be loads of these things around and all these props that you can fire, and it's going to be like all these things happening, which on paper, works really well, but I think it's played down a little bit too much. In fact, that there's just kind of 3 Acme props, which you've seen before.
Yeah, they've been set up.
They've been set up with the investigation. You've got like the hammer and you've got the black hole. And
that's great.
And the magnet. And they're wonderful. Yeah, fantastic. And there's some really, really funny bits. And there's probably the funniest bit in the film for me when Roger's on about going to drop you like a ton of bricks and the ton of bricks falling on him. It's probably
that's brilliant.
That's probably the funniest scene in the whole thing. Like a ton of bricks. Boom. It's just that timing.
It's amazing.
I love it. I love the set piece. I love the fact that, it all comes back round and everything's rounded off here and from a story point of view. There's a few things I don't like. I don't like when one of the weasels dies and then he just hits the lever as his soul's floating up.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, well, is it working or not? Can they just do anything at any time? You're in the flow then, I guess. Do you know what the dip's made out of?
They tell us in the film, don't they?
Yeah, acetone, turpentine, benzene.
And benzene, which are the 3 things that animators use to remove the ink from cells.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of how to kill a cartoon, which again, I loved that when I read
That's
into that.
great tie-in.
It's a good sequence, but I think it could have been, like John said, a little bit more elevated, given what Zemeckis did with Back to the Future for a start. Like, if it was anywhere near as nail-biting as that clock tower sequence, then we probably would have been in for a real thrill ride. But I think it does feel like we've seen everything and now they're just tying it up.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got to go against you.
All right.
I am totally satisfied by this ending.
That's fine.
Like you said, the Jeopardy's there and it's fantastic. The Weasels are in there and are on top form, but we also get 2 Dooms. We get, obviously, Doom when he's a human being, but then this massive reveal.
Holy smoke, he's a toon!
That Doom is this awful cartoon who takes his glove off and he's got an anvil and slams him across the room, and then it's like that menacing saw.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
He's got knives for eyes as well, hasn't he?
Yeah.
His voice.
Love it.
Jesus.
Yeah. Awful.
Awful. It keeps getting higher and higher.
Yeah.
Remember me when I killed your brother? It's and then it's them springs when he bounces
Yeah, the
across
springs
the
are
factory.
ridiculous.
But terrifying. It's that's probably the problem I've got with it. I had enough with one Doom. I don't need to see this guy, and I always try and envisage what he looks like under that rubber mask, because everything's just obviously the human element of Doom is just to cover up the cartoon underneath.
Yeah.
So what does that cartoon look like? That's terrifying for me.
I love it when Roger shows up from the sewer and he's giving it the big and waving his gun around like he owns the place.
Yeah.
Oh, he's
That's
great.
hilarious. He's never been more confident.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have been.
Brilliant. What do you think about this song and dance act from Valiant?
I find it a little bit uncomfortable to watch, to be honest.
Really?
I think the main reason is because it's Bob Hoskins doing it, and he just seems so far out of his comfort zone. I can almost imagine him getting the shooting schedule and dreading the day he had to do the song and dance act.
Yeah.
I've no idea if that
Shit.
was the case, obviously, but that's a bit how it feels. Apart from that, I love it as a plot point, the complete Valiant arc. The Weasels all laughing themselves to death is great. Although at the same time, I am a bit sad to see them go as well.
I am.
And Roger has a great line where he's like, "You're killing him, Eddie. You're slaying him. You're knocking him dead."
Yeah, brilliant.
Great. So it's an important plot point. Needs to be in there, but watching through my fingers a little bit as well.
Really? I think it could be a lot more cringe-inducing than it is, but just over the mark a little bit. But I still like, and it does hark back to Eddie's days at the circus. He's a song and dance man.
Yeah.
And that payoff with the Weasels dying laughing. They're actually laughing at each other being murdered, which is chilling.
There's no level
What
of the
about-
sleaze of this film, like it's so dark. But I love this bit. I love how it's totally against type of the character and totally against type of the actor. It does make it cringeworthy, but you know that this is what he's got to do. He's got an idea and he's got to do this, and it works. For me, it's a very theatrical scene. Doom leaves almost stage left and goes behind the curtain, and then he then comes out and does this big performance. And I absolutely love the singing sword as well. That's an Sinatra callback.
Witchcraft. Love him.
That's hilarious. It's hilarious, that guy. Like, I could have done with another 20 seconds of him. Just loads of great little bits. But yeah, that song and dance for me, I think works really well. And I think it's great that Hoskins does so well with it.
Beautiful. I really love it when Benny busts in. Hey, Sister Mary Francis. He says, I've been a cab for 37 years. Not a cab driver. I've been a cab for 37 years. Meaning he's just 37 years old. Great. And the glorious ending with all the cartoon characters together having a wonderful time. And then the disappear and reappear in ink reveals the will that Acme left Toontown never fails to put a smile on my face, that.
Yeah, that is all great. Apparently, Wile E. Coyote is in there somewhere from what I've read, but I've looked and I can't see him. I mean, I love Wile E. Coyote. And Speedy Gonzales apparently is in there as well. I can't see him either.
Right. No, I've not noticed them.
It's when it pans round, they're all just like part of the group. But another thing I've read, I don't know if you guys have read this or have seen it, but Luke might have seen it. But if you watch it frame for frame, you know, when the dip machine goes through the wall.
Yeah.
And the train comes past. If you watch that frame by frame, apparently there's a murder in every carriage of the train.
Really?
Oh my god.
It's going to be like a murder on the Orient Express type of thing, or it's supposed to be the dip.
Terrifying.
But there's silhouettes of like murder in every carriage. And I've looked, but I cannot get frame by frame on my telly downstairs. So I've just seen it like every 3 or 4 frames. But you can tell there's silhouettes there and they are doing something, so I think I need to check that out to verify
check
it.
that
But
out, yeah.
if anyone can check that out, that's a brilliant fact.
Finally, what I love is the old hand buzzer comes into play again.
Yeah.
And Eddie lands a big wet one straight on Roger's kisser.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
You fucking love this film.
I love it. I love it.
Did you know as well that the end credits were the longest end credits reel ever? 800 names on there with all the animators.
Jesus.
And Kathleen Turner, like you mentioned before, Luke, she wasn't on there, so
Yeah.
could have been 801.
Yeah,
Imagine
I mean,
it was
I'm
like-
not surprised, yeah.
One off the Guinness World Record, and then Turner's like left it off. Imagine, he could have won it. He could have won it.
So all's well that ends well. Roger and Jessica are finally reunited. The Toons have their town back, and Eddie gets closure from his demons. He's not such a sourpuss after all.
Reception and awards.
There's been some disputes on the budget of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. In initial reports, it said it was 70 million, but Amblin and Touchstone insist that it's only 50. This was 20 million over the initial projected $30 million budget, which is tiny for a production like this. Despite the confusion in budget, there's no confusion about the return. Roger Rabbit returned a whopping $156 million domestically and overall $329 million worldwide. In today's money, that is $720 million. Big return.
Massive. I know it held the record, didn't it, for a while for the most expensive movie ever made?
Yeah, it did, yeah. And then it was taken over by Terminator 2 in 1991.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what had the record before Roger Rabbit?
Was it Rambo 3?
Rambo 3, yeah.
Yeah.
What a waste of money that was.
Terrible.
Shut up, man. It's the best one. Rambo 3, Mission Impossible 2. What's the matter with you people?
At the Oscars, it was nominated 7 times, winning 4 for sound effects editing, visual effects, film editing, and Richard Williams won a Special Achievement Award for animation direction as well.
Rightly so.
Rightly so.
Well deserved.
Yeah.
The film also won Best Fantasy Film, Best Director, and Best Visual Effects at the Saturn Awards, and Visual Effects at the BAFTAs as well, so cleaning up technical awards.
Yeah.
It has a huge 97% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a score of 7.7 out of 10 on IMDb.
Right.
From a critical point of view, Pete Travers in People magazine said, "Your eyeballs have no other choice than to go boing." Gene Siskel said, "This is a movie that demands to be seen twice. The first time, one is likely to be dazzled to the point of exhaustion. The second time, one can appreciate the artistry and good humour more easily."
Nice.
And his pal Roger Ebert said, "Sheer enchanted entertainment from the first frame to the last." Surprise from Roger, surprised he didn't say it's a load of shit.
Just because his name's in there, that's why.
There are very few negative reviews, but Richard Corliss, writing in Time magazine, said, "The opening cartoon upstages the movie that emerges from it." That's not true.
No.
I mean, it's great, but come on.
Yeah, you've seen it
It
before,
sets
but
it
Tom
up.
and Jerry have done that for 50
I know.
years.
And completely dismissing all of the genius work from the animators that have gone into it. So, wowing audiences and critics alike, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is as fresh today as it's always been.
Sequels and influence.
The success of Who Framed Roger Rabbit led to talk of a sequel almost immediately, and pretty much consistently to this day, but unfortunately, that is yet to materialise. Roger does pop up in a few cartoons of his own that premiered at screenings of some big movie releases. I do remember personally going to see Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and seeing the first one, which is called Tommy Trouble. And this, for me, in my, 9 or 10-year-old head, was proof positive that there was going to be a sequel. And I couldn't quite compute in my mind when it didn't materialise. I thought, well, surely they're making them again, so why isn't there a sequel? I was devastated. Still devastated. I'd love to see a sequel.
That rings a bell with me, actually.
Yeah, did you see that as well?
Now you mention it, I think I did. I can definitely remember seeing Roger Rabbit on the screen in the cinema, which wasn't the film.
Yeah, there are a few of those cartoons. A few sequels to the book as well in the intervening years, like we talked about. Roger starred in a series of comic books that continue his story as well, but that film still evades us.
It does, but there have been a couple of possible sequels that have been mentioned over the years. So there was a prequel called Toon Patrol. That was where Roger and some other Toons were drafted into the army during World War II and go on a mission in Nazi Germany to save Jessica. Spielberg said, no chance.
No chance.
He was right, surely. That sounds ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
And there was a sequel idea called Who Discovered Roger Rabbit, set in the 50s. Zemeckis says about that, a script exists, and it was more of a continuation than a sequel. Disney said no, because there's no princess in it.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
He said he doesn't know where it fits in the universe, but there is a wonderful script sitting at Disney. The word is that Disney don't care for the character of Jessica, which in this day and age, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I can't believe there hasn't been a sequel, though. I mean, nowadays, if something made, what was it, $720 million, it would be straight in there.
I know.
Greenlit before it even came out, make another one straight away.
No.
I think just the workload attached to it.
Yeah, good point.
The animators are going, no, I know how hard that is to do. Our price is now 700 million. That's what the budget needs to be. I'm not doing that again. I'm not drawing all that shit again, because we went on a whim. We went against everything that we thought we were going to go against. We had live action stuff. We didn't know it was going to work. It worked really, really well. So pay us 4 times as much. That's probably what happened. It's probably why they never made them.
IMDb is showing that a sequel slated for a 2022 release. Seems a bit premature, and I mean, I'd be very surprised if that materialised at all. But another question from one of our patrons, George Anderson, asks, how would we feel a sequel would go over now with classic 2D animation not really in vogue anymore? Should the filmmakers stay true to the source and do only 2D, or go for more CG animation? What do you think?
Usually when I hear about sequels planned for classics, I do roll my eyes a little bit, but this one I'd be all for. I mean, Hoskins, of course, wouldn't be around, unfortunately.
R.I.P.
But there's loads of stuff they could do within that world still. I mean, if they do make it, what I'm expecting is for it to basically ape the original, like Hollywood tends to do. But if they really try and do something groundbreaking again, I think they definitely could. What I'd love to see them do is combine all these different elements of animation that we have now. So keep the live action aspect, obviously, and blend it with hand-drawn animations like in Roger Rabbit, but also incorporate Pixar-style CGI as well. Bring in Japanese anime influence as well, like we talked about.
Lovely.
Something that includes all these different animation styles with live action and does it to the level that Roger Rabbit does it. Could be just as good as Roger Rabbit and just as groundbreaking as Roger Rabbit. I'm not expecting them to be that adventurous, but if nothing else, it'll be great to see Roger and Jessica again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think maybe we'd edit that out, John, because if Disney hear about your plans, you'll be snapped up by them. That's a genius idea.
Or maybe they'll just lift the idea and then never hear about anything ever again.
Yeah, I wonder which one of those two things would happen. Yeah.
I will be investigating someone dropped a piano on your head. In answer to that question for the 2D, I think it's the point I feel that it needs to stick with the original concept and the original premise, and it needs to be 2D. And I think if they do that and they maintain that retro look of Roger Rabbit from 1988, and they have that exact same premise and that exact same procedure and that exact same technique, it's exactly what's needed for uptight and grumpy millennials like us to turn around to the younger generation and go, you don't need all that Pixar shit. You just draw it like we used to do.
1 million illustrations, just do that.
Yeah.
Easy. Look, it's
14 months worth of painstaking work.
I think that they should definitely stay true to what Roger Rabbit is. And if they were going to combine all the things like John said, which I think is a fucking phenomenal idea, it could be something completely different. But I think Roger Rabbit should just be Roger Rabbit. It is traditional. It is retro anyway. Even to us in the 80s, it's retro and it's traditional. You know, it's the 40s tunes. It's the 40s kind of vibe. I would love to see it updated to maybe the 60s or maybe the 70s. Just exploring that genre of time or that place in time where it could be, you know, really Pixar animation made Toontown a desolate place and there's somewhere else you can go.
Nice.
Toontown is now dying because 2D and traditional elements have been replaced by something else. So I think there is a lot of things that they can do with it and a lot of ways that can address the progression in technology. But in the delivery of the film, I think it should all be retro, old-fashioned 2D. Do it that way, because that's Roger Rabbit, isn't it?
Yes, it is. My need to see a sequel hasn't relented since I was 7, since I first saw the film. I still feel the same now, but I just can't see it happening. I've no doubt that if it's done in the old-fashioned way, that it would appeal to kids and adults, if it follows the same vein as the original. I just don't think that Disney would have the balls to follow through on doing the classic animation style in case that it didn't go over with audiences. And they wouldn't want to give the animation a modern spin, potentially because that might be a backlash from lovers of the original. So I think it's maybe a bit of a rock and a hard place. I'd love to see it. I just can't see it happening. It's been talked about for 32 years now.
Yeah, they wouldn't take a risk, but if anyone's in a position to take a risk on a big budget film, it's Disney. They own Marvel, they own Star Wars, they own
That's
Pixar.
true.
They could easily make a $200 million film that flopped. Makes no difference to them.
They could, but really, when they've got loads of plates spinning, then really, why would they want to resurrect this when a 32-year-old film, does it still have a fan base? What's the point when they've got loads of other franchises going?
I think because of everything that we've spoke about, I think because the character really works on every level, and because the premise works on every level, and there's nothing like this out there now, and they could release something now that still has that retro vibe to it. I think they could have another Roger Rabbit on their hands and reintroduce this character to a new generation.
The reason to do it would be for artistic reasons. Let's do something incredible that's never been done before, that will be watched for the next 100 years, like all these classic characters are. Is that desire still there in Disney like it was 70 years ago? Probably not.
Yeah.
But then if you look at all the parodies that have been done, I mean, look at the success of Shrek, which it's computer animation, yeah, fair enough. It's DreamWorks, Spielberg's behind it, and that's fine. But they do the same thing with the parody of mythical creatures and fairy tales. It's the same kind of vibe. They're still riffing off something. So you can now bring back that idea, but I don't think it will be as fresh. I think people still know who Bugs Bunny is and who the Looney Tunes are, and I think you could really bring that back. I mean, Spielberg tried to do that early 90s with the Animaniacs and tried to bring this whole kind of Looney Tunes thing back. And I think there's always people looking for a franchise, especially now. And if you can kickstart something that's then going to have animations to spin off onto Netflix and to spin off onto different streaming programs and go to Amazon Prime and have the bullets from the gun, like we said, I'd love to see a cartoon of them.
Yeah.
I think it's going to go ahead. I think it's going to get made. I think they're going to take a chance on it because I don't think it's as important to everyone else in the world as it is to you, Luke, to be honest. I would take a punt on this, no problem.
I can't believe they haven't done it because it's this real golden egg they've got there potentially. It's only like one film, it's untapped, that whole world and that character. Any other studio would chop their arm off to have Roger Rabbit on the books.
Yeah. Well, the influence of Roger Rabbit was far-reaching. Live action mixed with animation was attempted in other films in the years following it. Films like Cool World from 1992, starring Brad Pitt and an animated Kim Basinger. And it's got a 6% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, so
too high.
Not fantastic. Yeah. I think part of the reason for that is that Basinger's character name, she's called Holly, Holli, and her surname is Wood, Would.
Oh.
Terrible.
Oh.
Terrible.
Awful.
Space Jam in 1996 was more successful. It stars Michael Jordan. Bill Murray finally had his crack at melding live action and animation.
Yeah.
It's got the Looney Tunes cartoons in there as well, and also that's got a sequel coming out, slated for release next year with LeBron James.
It has, yeah. I think we were probably a bit old for that. We were about 15, 16. When
I never saw it for that reason.
Seen it,
but I know people that are younger than us, who were kids at the time, love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Most strikingly, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is talked about as being held directly responsible for what's referred to as the Disney Renaissance, directly after the film's release. Disney had been going through this low period from the late 70s onwards. There was a change of ownership, and one of their biggest stars, Don Bluth, left to form his own studio and took a big chunk of Disney's animators with him. Don Bluth Productions was a major rival to Disney, outstripping them at the box office for a few years as well. But the success of Who Framed Roger Rabbit influenced Disney to focus their attention to largely well-known stories. It paid off. For the next 10 years, Disney produced films like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Pocahontas, Tarzan, Hercules, which were hugely successful.
Yeah.
And that put Disney back on top again, leading to the birth of the Pixar movies. So not only a success with audience and critics, Who Framed Roger Rabbit was hugely influential on the industry. If only we could have got that goddamn sequel, though.
If only you could have got the goddamn sequel.
All the right movies ranking.
So there you have it then. We've reached the end of the tale, the final curtain. Goofy, Daffy, Tinkerbell, Donald, they're all waiting with bated breath to hear our scores for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So John, what are your final thoughts on the film and your score out of 10?
I like the film a lot. The thing Roger Rabbit gets praised for is the blend of animation and live action, and that's the thing it should get praised for. That hasn't been matched before or since, and it is incredible. I love how they set out to do something that had never been done before. I love that about the film. That never happens with big budget films nowadays, or not since Avatar anyway. I love the passion and the love for the art that leaps off the screen from the whole animation team. Richard Williams' work here is 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Whatever the highest score is, he gets it.
That's it, yeah.
For those reasons, the film has the makings of a masterpiece for me, but the final product just isn't. I mentioned the storytelling, and the level of that, to me, is way below the level of the animations, and it does feel a bit like a missed opportunity because of that. That said, I love Roger. I love the Looney Tunes cameos. Jessica, Bob Hoskins, the Weasels are all great. Lots of great things, so I'm going for 9 out of 10.
Wowza. Okay, I was expecting lower.
Were you? Right, okay.
Yeah, I was expecting lower. That's a decent
Those
score.
animations, I can't go lower. They're incredible.
Yeah, they are. Fantastic. What about you, Westy?
Right, okay, fucking hell. Right, so...
I mean, you don't have to if you don't want it.
Yeah. That is what we do, generally, though.
I know, all right.
It's not a surprise.
I know. I just didn't expect it to come round so quick. I was still thinking about it. It was great fun when I was a kid. It was something I'd seen and hadn't seen before and I haven't seen since. Really, I watched it again and I really appreciate the craft behind it. For me, this separates itself out, like John said. You know, there's some elements that really let it down for me. Mm-hmm. It's the overall seediness and the overall dourness of it. It just leaves us feeling a little bit sad when it finishes. Like
you love that shit?
I love it when it's intentional. I don't like it when it's unintentional, as this is. I love the characters. I love all the elements, but like John said, when it's put together, it doesn't gel consistently as a whole film for me. Like, I watched it again for this, and I thought to myself, like, when it finished, I thought, well, I don't really have much desire to see that again for about 10 years, really. It's fun. I've no real desire to watch it again. It's a breakthrough in the craft, but I'll be totally honest, it's not necessarily a craft that I'm passionate about or interested in, the animation side of stuff. I think it's fantastic what they achieved, but it's not something that I'll go out my way or get excited about. It's just that element of cinema to me that doesn't really appeal. I appreciate it. It's good fun. Terrified of it. It leaves us a little bit weird, a little bit dour. I don't think I'm going to show my kids it because it'll fucking terrify them. So I'm going to go for 7.5.
Wow.
Sorry.
Hey, it's fine. That's fine. I genuinely can't fathom when people say they don't find this fun or they don't like the film. I think it doesn't disappoint to me in the slightest. I think the film's so multi-layered that you can watch it from loads of different angles. You can wonder at the animation and the fact that they've managed to get all these classic cartoon characters together in one place. That's remarkable. That'll never happen again. The fact that new cartoon characters are introduced and integrate perfectly with the old ones, amazing. I really love the script. And I love, contrary to what you say, Westy, I love this seedy underbelly.
Yeah.
And the cheeky gags are great. I like that it's not afraid to go to those dark places, and any film with any kind of noir elements, I'm all in. And in the years since its first release, it didn't stick with me like things like Ghostbusters, Raiders, Back to the Future did. Like I said at the top, I think it was because the animation, as I got older, it's not cool for a 16-year-old to be watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I didn't go back to it till my late 20s. So for that reason, I'm going to strip a mark off it, and I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Good score.
It is a good score.
If you do say so yourself.
It's one of mine. On Twitter, our followers have been voting on Who Framed Roger Rabbit as well. A few comments first. Gary West at Flailin' Kermit. Gary is a patron of ADRM. He said, it's a light-hearted crime noir film. It's a period piece. It's genuinely funny comedy. It's a dazzling showcase of practical effects. And it's an animation nerd's dream come true. It is Gary's favourite film, and he concluded by saying that he loved it as a kid, he loves it even more as an adult, and he's positive that people will still be loving it long after he's dead.
Oh, fucking hell, I'm sorry, Gary.
Great.
Can I just say, it's there's no relation here. I'm not doing this to get back at me brother or something.
Evil twin.
Evil twin.
Matt Packer at MJP Writer said, a brilliant tuned-up pastiche of Chinatown that still elicits wonder and awe deep into the age of pixels and processing power. Replete with gonzo ideas, and despite all the references, has its own identity, thanks largely to Hoskins, who carries the whole thing on his shoulders. Big praise for Bob.
Great,
yeah.
James Hulson Beach at James Hulson B simply said, Bob Hoskins, man. Bob Bloody Hoskins. That is it.
That's his review.
That's it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And finally, not everyone can love the same thing, of course. Matt Lum, at MattLum1, who was also a patron of the RM, said, I always thought it was shit.
All right, fair enough.
Oh, well.
Cheers, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for backing me up.
With all the votes in on Twitter, Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out with a 8 out of 10.
You all right?
Disappointing results. Surprised by that?
No, not at all,
No,
really,
no,
to be honest.
I was close, yeah.
I was expecting a little bit higher, considering it was voted for by Twitter followers to do on the podcast.
It was, yeah, it was.
And then they bumped us with an 8.
Screwed us over like Tweety Pie.
No more pities.
So that means that with our votes and the vote from Twitter combined, Who Framed Roger Rabbit has an overall score of 33.5 out of 40. Go to alltherightmovies.com/leaderboard to see how Who Framed Roger Rabbit is shaping up against the others we covered. Not that well, I suspect.
No, it'll be one of the lower ones, I think.
Yeah. As mentioned at the top, sign up to us on Patreon, www.patreon.com/alltherightmovies for regular additional exclusive movie podcasts and access to our podcast archive. And a shout out to our directors, chair tier patrons. They are Adam Cowie, Adam Yates, Damien Lennox, Anna Randall, Andrea Barker Said, Matt Lum, Graham Chater, Just Joe, Kenny Morrison, Gary West, Jamie Russell, Robert Shearer, Mike Riley, Robbie D, and George Anderson.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Great gang of guys. Thank you, guys. So that's a wrap. We're now off to Toontown to have a good old sing-along.
I'm not invited, obviously.
For all show notes, credits, and references that were used in production of the podcast, you can visit us at alltherightmovies.com/who-framed-roger-rabbit. Join us next time in All the Right Movies when John, Westy, and Matt will burrow into your subconscious as they talk about Chris Nolan's mind-bending Inception.
Nice.
Going to be a big one.
Yeah.
As always, if you could subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, we'd be thrilled. You probably know, but we're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and everywhere else. And features go up on our website regularly. That's www.alltherightmovies.com. Check that out for loads of great stuff. As always, on Twitter we are at right_movies, Instagram at all_the_right_movies, and the website again, alltherightmovies.com. That's all, folks. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
See you later, guys. Bye.